Chapter 1002. Arcane Tower and Cultivation Tower. Chi-Ji's face sank. The heaven-raising sword was his natal spiritual treasure. If he lost it, it would have a huge impact on his strength. Looking at Chi-Ji's appearance, Tring Dong didn't know what the former was thinking. He frowned and said, "Chi-Ji, are you going back on your word?" Chi-Ji coldly snorted and said, "Ching Dong, don't worry. I Chi-Ji am not that despicable. However, the heaven-raising sword is my natal spiritual treasure. This thing is too important to me. Moreover, you are not a sword cultivator. What use is it to you? Therefore, I plan to use the equivalent contribution points to exchange for the heaven-raising sword." Ching Dong frowned and nodded. "The heaven-raising sword is indeed of no use to me. Use contribution points to exchange for my agreement. With the value of the heaven-raising sword, 100,000 contribution points shouldn't be too much, right?" Hearing this, Chi-Ji's face turned green. Why didn't Tring Dong just rob him? 100,000 contribution points was something that would take him at least a few years to accumulate. However, thinking of the importance of the heaven-raising sword, Chi-Ji finally agreed to Tring Dong's conditions and transferred 100,000 contribution points to Tring Dong. After receiving the 100,000 contribution points, Tring Dong was in a good mood. Naturally, his impression of Zhuowen increased. If it weren't for Zhuowen, he wouldn't have been able to obtain 100,000 contribution points so easily. So. A series of sonic booms cut through the sky above the main city of Excellent Spirit Island. They arrived at the center of the main city. In the center of the main city there was an extremely large building complex. There were tall towers, pavilions, gardens, fake mountains, and the fragrance of flowers. Moreover, in this complex there were many young warriors coming and going from time to time. It looked very lively. This is the core of the main city, the outer court of Excellent Spirit Academy. In the future, you will be cultivating here for several years. The dean pointed at the huge complex below and smiled at the 10 freshmen behind him. Zhuowen also followed behind the dean, looking down at the buildings below. His gaze had a trace of emotion. The size of the main city was already exaggerated enough, but the core of the main city, the Divine Academy, was even more shocking. It actually took up half of the main city's surface area. The entire outer courtyard was like a small world with its own ecosystem. Inside, there was practically everything. The facilities were complete, and Zhuowen discovered that there were 2 buildings that stood out from the rest in Excellent Divinity Institute. Both of these structures were in the shape of towers. One of them was covered in countless strange runes that radiated with terrifying destructive power. Zhuowen could tell with a single glance that the runes on the tower were the work of an arcanist, and a very high-grade one at that. As for the other tower-like building, its surface was actually red and blue. Zhuowen also discovered that in this red and blue tower, the red one was rolling with blazing heat, while the blue one was releasing a terrifying cold air. It was as if the energy of ice and fire had perfectly fused together in this tower. Everything seemed so harmonious. The ice-fire holy rune is moving? When Zhuowen's gaze was focused on the red and blue tower, the ice-fire holy rune on the back of his hands suddenly started to move. Fortunately, Zhuowen forcefully suppressed this strange movement, so that no one else could discover it. However, Zhuowen's gaze was fixed on the red and blue tower. This tower that possessed the fusion of ice and fire energy definitely had an inseparable relationship with the ice-fire holy rune. This tower should have a trace of the ice-fire holy rune's origin? Xiao Hei's voice quietly sounded in Zhuowen's mind, causing Zhuowen's pupils to shrink. Another trace of origin? Could it not be the original body of the ice-fire holy rune? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Xiao Hei shook her head and said, "Could it be that you don't remember what the rune spirit of the ice-fire holy rune said? That fellow said that his original body was in the Hall of Ice and Fire in the Divine Academy's inner courtyard. This is only the outer courtyard, So how could the original body of the ice-fire holy rune exist here? Zhuowen nodded. Xiaohei was right. Back then, the rune spirit had clearly said that his original body was in the Hall of Ice and Fire in the inner courtyard. These words should be true. As for this tower that was formed from the fusion of ice and fire energy in the outer courtyard, it was most likely built by someone from the outer courtyard to imitate the Hall of Ice and Fire in the inner courtyard. However, what was the purpose of this tower? The dean also noticed that the gazes of the 10 people behind him were fixed on the 2 towers in the inner courtyard. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he explained, "These 2 towers are the most important buildings in the outer courtyard." As he spoke, the dean's right hand pointed at the tower that was covered with runes and said, "This tower is called the Arcane Tower. It was built by the outer courtyard's chief arcanist, Lord Mu Feng. Its purpose is to nurture outer courtyard geniuses with mental energy talent." Mu Feng. Zhuowen's eyes flashed. He was very familiar with the name Mu Feng. Back then, Elder Xuan had mentioned this person to him. It was said that Mu Feng had a clue about the 1,000-fold stone that could increase the success rate of fusing 9 types of earth fire. Moreover, Zhuowen's sharp senses noticed that the dean was very respectful towards Mu Feng. When he added the word Lord, his eyes were filled with admiration. Zhuowen knew that this Mu Feng was not simple. It was very possible that he was the arcane heavenly master who had set up the Yuan gathering array in the main city that Little Black had mentioned. If that was really the case, then Mu Feng was indeed amazing. Although Zhuowen had never seen how terrifying an arcane heavenly master was, Xiaohei had a very high evaluation of them. They were far more terrifying than ordinary Emperor Realm experts. After all, an arcane heavenly master was able to create a 7th-grade origin formation that was comparable to a demonic weapon. Without a doubt, even high-level Emperor Realm experts would not dare to provoke an arcane heavenly master. After all, a 7th-grade origin formation was too terrifying. After introducing the arcane tower, the dean pointed at the red and blue tower with his right hand again and said, "This is the outer courtyard's cultivation tower. It contains powerful ice and fire energy. This energy is very mysterious and can temper your meridians, increasing the capacity of your meridians and providing a shortcut for your cultivation." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. As soon as the dean said that, the rest of the geniuses behind him immediately looked at the cultivation tower. Among them, other than Zhuowen who had the talent to become an arcanist, the others did not have such talent. Therefore, they were naturally not interested in the arcane tower. However, this cultivation tower actually had the effect of tempering a cultivator's meridians. This point attracted everyone's attention. In a cultivator's cultivation, the dantian was the most important, followed by the meridians. After all, the meridians were the channels that channeled origin energy into the dantian. The meridians of the human body were extremely complicated and were divided into many types. For example, the 8 extraordinary meridians, the 12 meridians, the run and do meridians, and so on. It could be said that the meridians were an important organ for a cultivator's cultivation. However, the meridians were innate. Some people were born with thick meridians that could contain several times more origin energy than a normal person. Naturally, their cultivation speed would be several times faster than a normal person. These people were commonly known as geniuses. Some people were born with small meridians that could even be blocked. They could not contain much origin energy and their cultivation speed would be extremely slow. Some people were even unable to cultivate. These people were trash and were destined to have no fate with the martial path. As for the method of tempering meridians, it was basically unheard of in the outside world. It could even be said that it was very rare. After all, if such a method really existed, then it would be completely possible to create a monstrous genius with a terrifying cultivation speed. But now, this cultivation tower in the outer courtyard actually had the effect of tempering meridians. This could not help but cause the 10 people's expressions to change. They all stared at the cultivation tower with burning gazes. They also finally knew why the students of Excellent Divine Academy were all extraordinary. It was mainly due to the cultivation tower. Dean, there must be a price to enter the cultivation tower, right? Pom-Pom, who was carrying a long sword on his back, suddenly asked. The dean nodded and said, "Of course. If you want to enter the cultivation tower to cultivate, then you must pay a corresponding amount of contribution points. Moreover, the cultivation tower has a total of 10 floors. The higher the floor, the better the tempering effect. Of course, the required contribution points will also be higher." Dean, how do you obtain contribution points? Yun Zhongyang also opened his mouth and asked. Contribution points, as the name implies, you must make a contribution to the Academy in order to obtain the contribution points. In Excellent Divine Academy, there are many ways to obtain contribution points. In the future, you will slowly find out. However, the most mainstream way to obtain contribution points is to accept the Academy's missions. After completing the missions, you will be able to obtain contribution points. Hearing the dean's explanation, Zhuowen, Pom-Pom, and the rest of the 10 people all nodded their heads. It seemed like contribution points were very important in the Academy. Do you know why I called the 10 of you here alone? The dean smiled and asked the 10 people behind him. Zhuowen and the rest naturally shook their heads as they silently cursed in their hearts. Who would be able to guess your thoughts? After all, you are the top 10 freshmen this year. To be able to stand out from tens of thousands of people, you have already proven your talent and ability. I have specially brought you here mainly to give you the top 10 freshman rewards. Now follow me. I will bring you to receive your rewards. After saying that, the dean waved his sleeves and led them into the Excellent Divine Academy. The Excellent Divine Academy was indeed very large. Within it, there were countless pavilions and terraces. Moreover, the Excellent Divine Academy students that they met along the way were all full of energy and had strong cultivations. When the Excellent Divine Academy students saw the dean bring Zhuowen, Pom-Pom, and the rest of the 10 people in, they first revealed astonished expressions before respectfully bowing towards the dean. Zhuowen even noticed that many of the surrounding students were pointing at the 10 of them and whispering to each other, as if they were admiring some rare exotic beast. With regards to the surrounding seniors pointing and whispering, Zhuowen also felt a little helpless. However, he did not take it to heart. The dean brought the 10 of them through an ancient corridor, pavilions, and courtyards. Finally, they arrived at a rather large pavilion. This was a study room. On the surrounding walls of the room, there were paintings and calligraphy. In the middle of the room, there was a wooden table made of red sandalwood. On the side of the wooden table, there were rows of books. It looked elegant and unique. Chapter 1003. Contribution Counter. Standing in front of the desk, the 10 of them looked at each other in dismay. They never thought that the dean would give them 2 types of rewards. Dean, can contribution points be used to exchange for spirit treasures, elixirs, and the like? Pom-Pom suddenly stood up and asked. Of course. The dean nodded. Then I'll choose contribution points. Pom-Pom calmly said. Since contribution points could be exchanged for spirit treasures and elixirs, and the dean had said that contribution points could be used to enter the cultivation pagoda, it was obvious that contribution points were more flexible than physical objects. Moreover, in Garcia Divine Academy, contribution points would definitely be used everywhere. Thus, Pom-Pom chose to exchange for contribution points. After all, with contribution points, it would undoubtedly be easier to do things in the academy. The dean's eyes revealed a trace of craftiness as he asked, "Are you sure you want to choose contribution points?" Pom-Pom was a little suspicious of the dean's attitude. Her eyes narrowed as she nodded. "I'm sure." The dean nodded and looked at the other 9. "What about the 9 of you? Is it the same as Pom-Pom's choice? Do you also have to choose contribution points?" They weren't stupid and naturally knew that contribution points were more flexible than physical objects. It would be strange if they didn't choose contribution points. Zhuowen felt that the dean's attitude was a little strange. Although he felt that something was wrong, Zhuowen still chose contribution points. After all, contribution points should be the currency of Garcia Divine Academy. In the academy, contribution points were definitely needed everywhere. If one didn't have contribution points at the beginning, it would definitely be difficult to move forward in the academy. But what was the meaning of that crafty look in the dean's eyes? Could it be that behind the contribution points reward, there was some other secret? Since you have all decided, then your rewards will be changed to contribution points. This time, the 1st to 10th place will be rewarded with contribution points from 10,000 to 1,000. First place will be 10,000 and 10th place will be 1,000. Saying that, the dean waved his sleeves and 10 black rays flew out. Then, the 10 black rays were like small snakes that coiled around the right wrist of Zhuowen and the other 9, turning into something like a wrist guard. Zhuowen was shocked. He quickly raised his right hand and found that there was a black wrist guard on his right wrist. In the middle of the wrist guard, there was a light screen about an inch wide. The light screen showed the number 10,000. There's no need to be surprised. What you have in your hands is a contribution counter. This thing records the contribution points you have. The number inside represents the contribution points you have, the dean said unhurriedly. Everyone came back to their senses and nodded. It seemed like this so-called contribution counter meter was a rather important item. It was actually the medium and carrier of contribution points, used to record the number of contribution points. Zhuowen's gaze landed on Mo Lingtian's hand beside him. He saw that the contribution meter in Mo Lingtian's hand displayed a number of 1,000. Clearly, the amount of contribution points awarded by the dean was not unfair. All right. The rewards have already been given to all of you. Next, I will order people to arrange the accommodations for the 500 new students. This jade strip has recorded the geographical location of the Jiaxin Institute. Your accommodations are also clearly marked. Saying this, the dean waved his sleeves again. 10 jade strips flew out and landed in the hands of the 10 students. Also, the Jiaxin Institute has always been a free school. There will not be any restrictions on your freedom, nor will you be forced to learn anything. However, there is one thing you must remember. In the future, you must pay a fixed fee of 20,000 contribution points to the institute every year. If you are unable to reach this amount, you will be expelled. When the dean's words came out, the 10 of them trembled. The dean's words were quite pleasant to hear. He would not restrict their freedom, nor would he force them to learn anything. However, when he said that they would have to pay 20,000 contribution points every year, the 10 of them were speechless. Based on the new student rewards, it would not be easy to obtain these contribution points. However, this dean had opened his mouth like a lion. Every year, they would have to pay 20,000 contribution points. If they were unable to reach this amount, they would be expelled. Wasn't this forcing them to continuously do missions to accumulate contribution points to pay for the school fees? The 10 of them looked at each other. This dean looked kind and amiable, but in reality, he was a cunning old fox. Dean, I would like to ask you about a person. Suddenly, Zhuowen stood up. Oh? Who is it? The corner of the dean's mouth rose. Zhuowen clenched his fist and asked excitedly, Is there a girl called Mu Chenxue in the outer court? Mu Chenxue? The dean was startled at first, but soon after, he nodded and continued, Yes. This little girl's talent is very strong. Her performance in the outer court is very strong. Then where is she now? Zhuowen's heart was about to jump out. Mu Chenxue was actually in the outer court. 3 months ago, this little girl advanced to the Emperor realm and was promoted to enter the inner court. The dean suddenly said. This sentence was like a bucket of cold water, causing Zhuowen to freeze in place. Is the inner court in the 9 underworld realm? And how can I enter the inner court? Zhuowen frowned and asked in disappointment. The lowest requirement to enter the inner court is the Emperor realm. If you can advance to the Emperor realm in the outer court, then you have the qualifications to enter the inner court. The dean said indifferently. Emperor realm? Zhuowen frowned. He didn't expect that the requirement to enter the inner court was so high. One had to be at least in the Emperor realm to enter? Looks like I won't be able to see Mu Qinxue for a while. Luckily, there are still 2 years before the cold poison acts up. There should still be time. Although he was disappointed, Zhuowen didn't lose his fighting spirit. Instead, he silently said to himself, "Alright, you guys can leave this place. You can also walk around the academy and familiarize yourself with the atmosphere." At this point, the dean's eyes flashed with a trace of craftiness. The 10 of them nodded, but in their hearts they were puzzled. This dean brought them here for no reason, just to give them some reward points and then leave with a few words? This was a little inexplicable. "Brother Zhua, let's walk around the Jiaxun Academy and familiarize ourselves with the atmosphere." Mo Lingtian came to Zhuowen's side and smiled. Zhuowen nodded. Just as he was about to leave with Mo Lingtian, a figure suddenly blocked his path. Raising his head, he saw Pom De's sharp gaze staring straight at Zhuowen. "What's the matter?" Zhuowen asked indifferently. "Zhuowen, you're very strong. In the Thousand Beasts Grotto, I was inferior and admitted defeat. However, this is the Jiaxun Academy. With my talent and the Academy's resources, my cultivation and strength will definitely increase by leaps and bounds. When the time comes, I will ask you for some advice. When the time comes, I hope you won't disappoint me," Pom De said, full of fighting spirit. Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry. I definitely won't disappoint you. On the other hand, you shouldn't disappoint me." Pom De's pupil shrank, but he laughed and said, "Don't worry, next time we fight, you won't be disappointed." After saying that, Pom De turned around and left without any hesitation. Zhuowen nodded as he looked at Palm Tree's sharp back. Palm Tree's martial heart was extremely firm. Although he had been defeated by Zhuowen in the Myriad Beasts Grotto, he didn't have any resentment. Instead, he was even more determined to pursue martial arts. With Pom De's current mentality and aptitude, Zhuowen knew that Pom De's future achievements wouldn't be low. As soon as Pom De left, Zhuowen felt a venomous gaze directed at him. Turning his head, he saw Yun Zhongyang staring at him with an unkind expression, as if he was about to devour him. "What? You're not satisfied? Do you think that the punishment of breaking your arms wasn't enough?" Zhuowen said indifferently. Yun Zhongyang's eyelids twitched and he coldly said, "Don't be so smug. Do you think anything can happen in the Jiaxun Academy? You're only in the venerable realm right now, while I'm already a heavenly venerable. I'll definitely become a martial emperor before you. At that time, let's see how you'll be my opponent." After saying that, Yun Zhongyang swaggered off while Zhuowen sneered. Yun Zhongyang had lost to him twice, so it probably left a shadow in his heart. With his current state of mind, who knew how long it would take for him to advance to the martial emperor realm? Moreover, while Yun Zhongyang was improving, Zhuowen was also improving. When the time came, Yun Zhongyang would probably suffer a crushing defeat at his hands again. Zhuowen didn't pay too much attention to Yun Zhongyang's words. Zhuowen was the type of person who wouldn't offend others unless they offended him. If someone offended him, Zhuowen would definitely use thunderous methods to teach them a lesson. Of course, Yun Zhongyang wasn't the only one looking at him with resentment. Among them, the 5th-rank Sky Origin also had an extremely unfriendly gaze. In front of the Myriad Beasts Grotto, not only had Zhuowen beaten him and his third brother, but his eldest brother, Yuan Zhao, had also died because of Zhuowen. Their Alcade Sacred Dynasty and Zhuowen were already irreconcilable, so how could Sky Origin be nice to Zhuowen? However, Sky Origin didn't say anything. Instead, he revealed a strange smile to Zhuowen and left. Looking at Sky Origin's back, Zhuowen frowned slightly. He had a feeling that Sky Origin was acting strange. As for why he had such a feeling, Zhuowen couldn't put his finger on it. Looks like I have to be careful of Sky Origin and the Yuanxing brothers. Narrowing his eyes, Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. Although Yuanxing and Sky Origin were weaker than him, he was afraid that the two brothers would think of ways to scheme against him. Therefore, he had to be on guard against them. Walking out of the dean's study, there was an extremely large square 100 meters in front of the study. There were many students in the Divine Academy's uniform standing on the square. These students had their hands crossed in front of their chests as if they were waiting for something. When Zhuowen, Pom-Pom, and the other freshmen walked out of the study and arrived at the square, the students who were waiting immediately stood up like cats that had smelled blood. They stared at Zhuowen and the other freshmen with burning eyes, as if they were hunters that had spotted their prey. Zhuowen frowned slightly. These people should be the seniors of the academy, so why were they gathered in the square? Moreover, it seemed like they were waiting for the 10 of them. Haha, you're finally out. We've been waiting for you for a long time, my dear juniors. Chapter 1004. Snatching Contribution Points. Who are you? We don't seem to know you, do we? Why are you waiting for us? Yun Zhongyang was the first to speak. He stared at the burly man with an unruly gaze. Just now, he had sensed that the burly man's aura was at the peak of the golden venerable realm. His cultivation was one level lower than his. With Yun Zhongyang's unruly personality, he naturally could not tolerate a cultivator with a lower cultivation than him speaking to him in such a manner. Of course, Zhuowen was an exception. After all, Zhuowen's combat power was too strong. Even though Yun Zhongyang was arrogant, he had to admit that Zhuowen was indeed stronger than him. But who was this burly man in front of him? He was only at the peak of the golden venerable realm, yet he dared to yell at him. He even looked at him, as if he did not care about them at all. The burly man chuckled. He did not seem to care about Yun Zhongyang's attitude. Instead, he pointed at the contribution points counter on Yun Zhongyang's right hand and said indifferently, "The 10 of you should be the top 10 freshmen this year. I'm afraid that you have received quite a lot of contribution points as a reward, right? If you don't want to suffer physical pain, contribute your contribution points." As soon as he said this, the 10 freshmen, including Yun Zhongyang, narrowed their eyes. The purpose of these outer yard seniors waiting for them in the square was to snatch the contribution points in their hand. The atmosphere in the square immediately fell into a strange freezing point. Zhuowen, Pom, and the rest of the freshmen did not expect that they would be intercepted by these seniors the moment they walked out of the dean's study. Looking at the burly man's gaze, it was obvious that he already knew that they would be able to obtain contribution points. He had purposely waited for them on this path with the goal of snatching the contribution points in their hand. Zhuowen frowned slightly as he looked at the senior students blocking the way in the plaza. He could not help but recall the craftiness in the dean's eyes in the study. It seemed that the dean had long predicted that they would encounter such a situation. In other words, contribution points could be snatched away? It seemed that the outer yard was not a peaceful place. The law of the jungle was still vividly displayed here. However, there was one thing that was better than the outside world, and that was that they could not kill each other in the academy. At this moment, the dean had already walked out of the study and stood in the shade of a tree in a rather remote area. He silently watched everything that was happening in the square in front of him, and 2 figures had unknowingly appeared behind him. The 2 figures were a man and a woman. The man was about 30 years old and had a head full of golden hair. He looked like a mighty lion and had a rough aura. Although He Tao's cultivation is at the peak golden master realm, he already has the battle strength of a heavenly master. Last time, he almost entered the heavenly master list. He can be regarded as the first person under the heavenly master realm. Us seniors don't dare to provoke him. However, this is also under the dean's tacit approval. Every year, we seniors only get this little benefit. However, the quality of this year's freshman is much better than the previous one. There are actually 2 early-stage Heavenly Masters. One of them seems to be a sword cultivator. Discussions sounded like firecrackers in the surroundings. Many seniors stared at the top 10 freshmen mockingly. Brother Joie, these seniors' cultivation is not very strong. How can they hold their heads high and provoke us? Emo Lingtian said with a frown. Juoan also felt a little strange. This group of seniors who gathered were mostly Golden Masters and Supremes. There were no Heavenly Masters. However, among the 10 freshmen, there were 2 early-stage Heavenly Masters. Moreover, other than Juoan and Emo Lingtian, the rest were all Golden Masters. He didn't know where these seniors got their confidence from. They thought that they could defeat them. He Tao slowly stepped forward. He pointed at Yun Zhongyang and said, "Looking at you, you seem to be very unhappy about contributing contribution points. Could it be that you want to reject my suggestion?" Yun Zhongyang's gaze was extremely cold. He had been crushed by Zhuowen many times during the test. It had already made his heart burn with anger. This dark-faced senior in front of him, who was only at the peak of Golden Venerable, actually dared to provoke him. With Yun Zhongyang's personality, how could he tolerate this? "I think you're courting death." With a cold snort, Yun Zhongyang bent his knees and arched his waist. Then, he suddenly shot out like a cannonball. He rapidly shot towards He Tao. The terrifying force almost formed a ring-shaped airwave in the air. "Yo, you have quite a character. However, let me, your senior, teach you a good lesson," He Tao said mockingly. His eyes emitted a sharp light. With a stomp of his foot, a terrifying force burst out. At this moment, it was as if a huge mountain had suddenly appeared on top of He Tao, causing the pressure around him to increase tremendously. The moment He Tao's aura burst out, Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He Tao's aura was terrifying. It had actually far surpassed the average peak of Golden Venerable. Even the average beginner Heavenly Venerable might not necessarily be able to match He Tao's powerful aura. "This He Tao is not simple," Zhuowen muttered to himself. The rest of the freshmen also revealed solemn expressions. Obviously, they had all noticed that He Tao was not ordinary. Blue Whale Diving Sea. Yun Zhongyang's gaze was cold. His force burst out and turned into a vast sea. On the surface of the sea, a huge blue whale rushed out of the sea and dived down. It swooped down towards He Tao, intending to crush him into powder. "Ha ha! Come on, tyrannical king's fist." He Tao laughed and punched out fiercely. Countless strong winds swept out, causing his robe and long hair to flutter. In an instant, his fist landed on the huge blue whale in the sky. Boom! The sound of an explosion suddenly resounded. Terrifying airwaves spread out, causing the entire square to tremble. Then, a scene that shocked Zhuowen happened. Yun Zhongyang's blue whale diving sea was actually stopped by He Tao's tyrannical king's fist. It was completely unable to move forward. It was as if the tyrannical king's fist was like a huge mountain in front of the huge blue whale. It was unable to move at all. "Break! Break! Break!" He Tao roared furiously. Punch after punch landed on the blue whale. The wind from his punches whistled and formed a hurricane. The fierce fist aura cracked the ground. A terrifying fist intent seemed to pierce the sky and explode the firmament. Fist intent. Looking at He Tao's unstoppable fist aura, Zhuowen could tell at a glance that He Tao had mastered a powerful fist intent. Moreover, it should be a fist intent that had reached the peak of perfection. It was very powerful and domineering. Boom! 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 He Tao continuously punched out dozens of times. The terrifying fist intent was monstrous. Countless fist shadows lingered in the air. Those were the traces left behind by the powerful fist aura. Last punch, tyrannical king's fist. He Tao stomped his feet and instantly appeared above the blue whale. He stepped on the head of the blue whale and punched down fiercely. As the punch landed, it was as if the sky and earth were collapsing. Bang! The blue whale wailed and instantly turned into blue powder. This punch had directly destroyed Yun Zhongyang's blue whale diving sea. Thump! 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 Yun Zhongyang's eyes were filled with disbelief. He retreated dozens of steps and was even a little confused. What's wrong with this senior? He's only a golden exalt. How can his combat strength be so terrifying? It had actually broken through his blue whale submerged sea with ease. Chapter 1005. Poor Yun Zhongyang. As soon as he said that, the other seniors who had gathered around burst into laughter. They looked at Yun Zhongyang with ridicule. Yun Zhongyang's eyes were extremely gloomy, but he was secretly shocked by He Tao's combat strength. He Tao was only at the peak of the golden venerable realm, so why was his combat strength so terrifying? Could it be that the combat strength of the seniors in the outer yard far exceeded their cultivation? My dear junior brother, I don't want to make things difficult for you. Hand over your contribution point. He Tao spread his hands and said to Yun Zhongyang mockingly, You want my contribution points? I don't think you have what it takes. Yun Zhongyang's eyes were extremely cold. He took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of He Tao. A blue trident appeared in his hand. It was the sea god's halberd. Sea god's sacrifice. Yun Zhongyang formed a seal with his hands. Suddenly, the sea around Yun Zhongyang surged with huge waves. Then, the sea god's halberd turned into the spine of the sea god. With the sea as his flesh, a huge phantom of the sea god was formed. Roar! Sea god! Yun Zhongyang roared. The phantom of the sea god took a step forward and rushed towards He Tao. Its giant foot was like a pillar that could hold up the sky. It did not hesitate to step on He Tao's head. It wanted to completely crush He Tao to death. He Tao's eyes flashed with a hint of excitement. He laughed loudly and threw out another punch. This punch seemed to be able to pierce through the sky, like a meteor streaking across the starry sky. Big Dipper meteor! A faint voice sounded. Then, the meteor-like fist energy cut through the void and fell. In an instant, countless meteors fell from the void and smashed heavily on the phantom of the sea god. Crack! The meteor shower contained extremely terrifying fist energy. The power of this punch was much stronger than He Tao's tyrannical king's fist. Under the meteor-like fist energy, the phantom of the sea god was completely annihilated and turned into nothingness. Poochie! Yun Zhongyang spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as snow as he retreated. He Tao, on the other hand, did not show any mercy. Like a ghost, he instantly appeared in front of Yun Zhongyang and viciously stomped down on him. Rumble! Yun Zhongyang was caught off guard. He only felt a sharp pain in his chest before his back made intimate contact with the ground. The terrifying force almost caused him to pass out. The other 9 freshmen looked on in shock. Yun Zhongyang was ranked 3rd among the freshmen, and his cultivation level was at the early stage of the heavenly venerable realm. Yet, he was being trampled by He Tao just like that. Especially when He Tao used the celestial meteor. Its power was terrifying. Coupled with He Tao's powerful fist intent, he was able to shatter Yun Zhongyang's sea god's sacrifice with a single punch. This He Tao's combat strength was even more terrifying than the average Empyrean martial artist. They didn't think that the older students of the Divine Academy would be so formidable. They had just entered and they had already encountered such a tough opponent. My dear junior brother, if you hadn't been so stubborn in the beginning, you wouldn't have had to suffer. Now that you've already lost to me, I'll gladly accept your contribution point. He Tao smiled as he patted Yun Zhongyang's cheek. He then extended his right hand, which was also wearing a technical contribution sheet. He Tao matched his technical contribution sheet with Yun Zhongyang's technical contribution sheet. Instantly, the 8,000 points on Yun Zhongyang's technical contribution sheet decreased rapidly until it finally reached 0. Zhuowen and the others were astonished when they saw this. It seemed that contribution points could be transferred like this. No wonder He Tao wanted to snatch their contribution points. Only 8,000 points? You're only ranked third among the freshmen? He Tao frowned when he saw that his contribution points had increased by 8,000 points. He was naturally very clear about the rewards for new students. From the 1st to the 10th place, the rewards were respectively 10,000 to 1,000 points. The reward for the 3rd place was 8,000 points. However, there were only 2 early-stage Empyrean geniuses among the top 10 freshmen this year. He thought that Yun Zhongyang would have at least 9,000 or 10,000 points. He didn't expect him to only have 8,000 points. Then you should be ranked first among the freshmen this year, right? I wonder which little fellow is ranked second. After He Tao pointed at Palm Tree, his gaze immediately fell on Yuankong and Shichue. Aside from Palm Tree and Yun Zhongyang, these two had the highest cultivation. They were both at the peak of Golden Venerable. He thought that the second place would be one of them. Palm Tree shook her head faintly. You misunderstood? I'm only ranked second among the freshmen. He Tao and the others in the square were stunned when they heard Palm Tree's words. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. Among the top 10 freshmen, there were only 2 early-stage Empyrean geniuses. Neither of them was ranked first among the freshmen. They were ranked second and third. Who was ranked first? They couldn't think of anyone among the top 10 freshmen who could be more abnormally powerful than Palm Tree and Yun Zhongyang. Of course, most of their attention was on Shichue and Yuankong. Their auras at the peak of the Golden Venerable realm were naturally the closest to that of a Heavenly Venerable. Moreover, it was possible that a Golden Venerable could surpass an early-stage Heavenly Venerable genius among the freshmen. If there really was such a monstrous genius among this batch of freshmen, it wouldn't take more than a few years for such a genius to rise up in the outer court. Of course, Zhuowen and Mo Lingtian, the 2 supreme-grade brats, were completely ignored by He Tao and the other seniors. After all, their cultivations were too insignificant among the top 10 freshmen. Looks like one of you two should be ranked first among the freshmen this time. He Tao was in high spirits as he stepped on Yun Zhongyang's body. His sharp gaze immediately landed on Yuankong and Shichu. Their expressions changed slightly as they shook their heads. He Tao's strength was too terrifying. Even Yun Zhongyang had been beaten up so badly by him. They didn't want to be the first to stand out. If it's not the 2 of you, could it be one of those 3? He Tao's gaze was cold as he pointed at Blue Smoke, Fenji, and Yuan Tong. However, the 3 of them quickly shook their heads. They didn't want to go up against a freak like He Tao. At this moment, He Tao's expression was a little ugly. Even the last 3 Golden Supreme Grade freshmen weren't ranked first among the freshmen this time. Could it be that the 2 remaining Supreme Grade brats were ranked first among the freshmen? Are you guys messing with me? None of the 8 of you are ranked first among the freshmen. Could it be that you want to tell me that the 2 Supreme Grade brats are ranked first among the freshmen? He Tao snorted coldly. He didn't believe that a mere Supreme Grade brat could be ranked first among the freshmen this time. It was simply inconceivable. A Golden Supreme Grade brat challenging a Heavenly Venerable was already considered a monstrous genius, but a Supreme Grade brat challenging a Heavenly Venerable was truly unbelievable. Moreover, this was a freshman who hadn't tempered his meridians in the cultivation tower. If it was the Supreme Grade seniors in the outer court who had cultivated in the cultivation tower for a period of time, they might be able to challenge an ordinary Heavenly Venerable. However, he didn't believe that a freshman who hadn't cultivated in the cultivation tower could be such a monstrous genius. Let me go. I'll tell you who's ranked first among the freshmen. At this moment, a weak voice came from under He Tao's foot. It was Yun Zhongyang's voice. He Tao nodded and released his foot. He said to Yun Zhongyang, "Tell me honestly, who's ranked first among the freshmen? Is it that guy with a sword on his back?" As he spoke, He Tao casually pointed at Yun Zhongyang, causing the latter to frown slightly. A sharp glint flashed across his eyes. At this moment, Yun Zhongyang was in an extremely sorry state. There was a trace of hatred in his eyes as he looked at He Tao, but he didn't show it. After that, Yun Zhongyang's cold gaze landed on Zhuowen. He grinned and pointed at Zhuowen, saying, "This guy is ranked first among the freshmen." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. As soon as Zhuowen's words came out, everyone's gazes instantly converged on him. When the seniors in the square cast their gazes on Zhuowen, the entire square instantly fell silent. This was because the so-called ranked first among the freshmen was actually the one with the weakest cultivation among the 10 freshmen. His cultivation was only at the late stage Supreme Being realm. He Tao's gaze followed Yun Zhongyang's finger and landed on Zhuowen. When he sensed the late stage Supreme Being realm aura from Zhuowen's body, he was silent for a moment. Then, he stepped on Yun Zhongyang again. Plop! Before Yun Zhongyang could even react, He Tao stepped on him again, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Are you King kidding me? A mere late-stage Supreme Being Realm cultivator is ranked first among the freshmen? I think you're just messing with me. As He Tao spoke, he ruthlessly stepped on Yun Zhongyang's body with his right foot. Perhaps because he was extremely displeased, He Tao even stepped on Yun Zhongyang's face, causing him to be covered in dirt. Poor Yun Zhongyang. He had only spoken the truth, but he had angered He Tao out of humiliation, causing him to suffer such an unexpected calamity. The other 9 freshmen looked at He Tao and Yun Zhongyang strangely. They couldn't help but mourn for Yun Zhongyang in their hearts. Everything I said was the truth. Zhuowen is ranked first among the freshmen, Yun Zhongyang hurriedly explained. Unfortunately, this only caused He Tao to step on him even more fiercely. This brat was lying to him, but he actually didn't change his words. He Tao was so angry that he stepped on him even more fiercely. After 10 breaths, He Tao finally stopped. Yun Zhongyang's face was almost unrecognizable. His entire body had turned into a tragic pig's head. When He Tao stepped on Yun Zhongyang, he deliberately controlled his strength. He didn't injure Yun Zhongyang's internal organs. These were only superficial wounds, but they didn't look good. Do you really think I'm a 3-year-old child? Now you should tell the truth, right? He Tao said casually. Yun Zhongyang, on the other hand, wanted to cry but had no tears. All he did was speak the truth. How did he end up like this? He stammered. If you don't believe me, you can go and take a look at Zhuo Wen's technical contribution sheet. It shows 10,000. He Tao was stunned. He nodded and his sharp gaze landed on Zhuowen. Let me see your contribution list. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He slowly stepped forward and said indifferently, There's no need to look. I'm ranked first among the freshmen. It's really you? He Tao's gaze focused. He immediately noticed that none of the other freshmen refuted him. In other words, this brat really was ranked first among the freshmen. Chapter 1006. Against He Tao at the same time, Zhuowen also flashed the contribution points table in his hand. He knew that it would be useless even if he denied it. After all, he was indeed the top new student. When He Tao and the other seniors saw the number on the contribution points table on Zhuowen's wrist, they all fell silent for a moment before bursting into an uproar. The top new student is actually this kid with the lowest cultivation? He Tao's eyes narrowed as he muttered in a low voice. Now you believe that I didn't lie to you, right? Hurry up and let me go. Yun Zhongyang was very sullen at this moment and said in a muffled voice. He Tao shrugged and said with a fake smile, Junior, I'm really sorry. It was all a misunderstanding just now. This is none of your business. You can leave now. Yun Zhongyang slowly got up. At this moment, his face was too horrible to look at. Using a pig's head to describe it was more appropriate. Yun Zhongyang glanced hatefully at He Tao and left the square dejectedly. His contribution points had been snatched away by He Tao, so naturally, no one would stop him. Junior, you're quite lucky to be the top new student. How about this? Senior won't make things difficult for you. As long as you give me 9,900 contribution points, I'll let you go. How about it? Heitao came in front of Zhuowen and said with a smile. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth held a smile as he said, Senior, this Zhuo doesn't dare to agree to your request. These contribution points are what we deserve after risking our lives. Is it really okay for you to snatch them away like this? Heitao narrowed his eyes and the smile on his face faded. He said indifferently, It seems that Junior intends to refuse Senior's kindness? As he said that, Heitao's face began to turn cold. The aura on his body surged out and formed countless astral winds on the surface of his body. Obviously, Heitao intended to snatch the contribution points by force. Heitao, I'll give you the contribution points of the top new student and leave the remaining 8 to us. How about it? The moment Heitao's aura surged, another 8 figures walked out from the crowd in the square. These 8 people had strong auras and their cultivation levels were at the peak of the Golden Venerate realm. They could be considered as one of the stronger seniors in the square. As soon as these 8 people appeared, the faces of many older students in the square, who were ready to make trouble, immediately fell. They are from the Emperor Pavilion. Isn't the person in the lead Du Tao from the Emperor Pavilion? He's not someone to be trifled with. It's actually Du Tao. This Du Tao's status in the Emperor Pavilion isn't low. Although his battle prowess is inferior to Heitao's, with the Emperor Pavilion, even Heitao wouldn't dare to not give Du Tao face, right? The older students in the square looked at these 8 people with fear in their eyes. It was obvious that these 8 people had an extraordinary background. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to intimidate the other restless older students. Du Tao? I really didn't expect that your rich and overbearing Emperor Pavilion would also join in on the fun. Heitao frowned slightly and said with some displeasure. Du Tao smiled indifferently and said, This isn't the Emperor Pavilion's decision. The 8 of us feel that we don't have enough contribution points to spend and want to earn some extra money. Hearing this, Heitao nodded and said with some fear, Since that's the case, I'll leave these 8 people to you. I'll take the first place among the new students. After he finished speaking, Heitao stomped his foot, and a terrifying energy soared. Then, a strong fist intent surged out, and he threw a punch at Zhuowen, as if he wanted to destroy Zhuowen with a single punch. This Heitao wasn't simple. Someone who could easily defeat Yun Zhongyang wasn't a simple character. Therefore, Zhuowen wouldn't underestimate him. With a flip of his right hand, a blood spear appeared in his hand. Then, he swung the blood spear and a profound spear intent burst out, forming countless ice crystals. Boom! Heitao's fist landed on the ice crystals. When he felt the intent realm within the ice crystals, his eyes narrowed and he said, Spear intent. I didn't expect you to have grasped the intent realm. No wonder you could obtain the first place among the new students. You're really unique. But your cultivation is too weak. Break for me. After saying that, Heitao stomped his foot and his fist intent became even more terrifying. With a punch, countless palm prints appeared, dazzling and dazzling. Gotcha! As expected, Zhuowen's spear intent couldn't block Heitao's fist intent and instantly shattered. Heitao's fist intent was like a rainbow piercing through the sun, smashing towards Zhuowen's chest. The moment Heitao made his move, Du Tao led the other 7 members of the Emperor Pavilion and surrounded the 8 top 10 freshmen, including Pom Pom and Mo Lingtian. If you don't want to suffer, hand over your contribution points quickly. Du Tao looked down at Pom Pom's 8 and said indifferently. Pom Pom narrowed his eyes and didn't say anything. He stomped his foot and unsheathed the long sword on his back with his right hand. Countless sword chi burst out and Pom Pom was like a sharp sword that had just been unsheathed, instantly arriving in front of Du Tao. Sword/art. A cold and sharp voice rang out. Palm Master straightened his right palm and a sharp sword pierced through space, slashing out horizontally. Immediately, a terrifying sword chi burst out, transforming into a crescent-shaped sword blade that shot towards Du Tao's chest, wanting to slash him to death at the waist. Palm's action directly showed his answer. If he wanted contribution points, he could only fight. Seems like you want to do things the hard way. Du Tao coldly snorted. With a flick of his finger, he took out a halberd from his spirit ring and raised it high above his head. Then, he suddenly smashed it down. An earth-shattering power gushed out and heavily smashed onto the crescent-shaped sword light, directly annihilating the sword light. Subsequently, Du Tao's eyes were cold as he held the halberd and instantly arrived in front of Palm. He flicked the halberd with both hands and it turned into halberd shadows that covered the sky, sealing Palm from all directions. While Du Tao and Palm Tree were fighting, Du Tao's 7 subordinates were already fighting with Mo Lingtian, Shi Ke, and the other freshmen. Countless elemental energy forces swirled in the air, blossoming into multicolored balls of light above the plaza. At this moment, He Tao's fist will was already closing in on Zhuowen. It was overbearing and wanted to completely destroy Zhuowen. Azura blood spear, Zhuowen said indifferently. He raised his blood spear and a huge sea of blood gushed out from the void. The boundless sea of blood blocked He Tao's fist intent in front of Zhuowen. General momentum of heaven and earth? With his fist intent blocked, He Tao finally revealed a trace of surprise in his eyes. The young man before him, who was only at the Supreme Being realm, was truly extraordinary. He had actually comprehended the momentum of the world. Taking a few steps back, He Tao's gaze turned serious as he said, "Your combat strength is pretty good. It seems like you didn't get first place by luck. However, if that's all you've got, I think you should hand over your contribution points as soon as possible. I haven't gone all out yet." It's more appropriate for me to say those words because I haven't gone all out either. Zhuowen lowered his head and said indifferently. He Tao's eyes narrowed, but he laughed out loud and said, "Good. Since that's the case, I won't hold back." Saying that, He Tao stomped his foot and punched out. Suddenly, countless astral winds were stirred up, and a domineering might gushed out from his fist. It was as if the one who punched out at this moment was an overlord who looked down on the world. Tyrant King's Fist. The fist intent, along with the fist aura, set off countless whirlwinds and arrived in front of Zhuowen in an instant. Zhuowen didn't dare to be careless and immediately formed 4 heads and 8 arms. He formed 8 spear auras and formed 8 seas of blood that instantly entangled the Tyrant King's fist, preventing it from exerting its power. What a strange secret technique. It can actually form 4 heads and 8 arms? He Tao frowned. He was a little surprised by Zhuowen's current appearance, but he didn't think too much about it. He stomped his foot and punched out again. This time, his fist was like a meteor that tore through the void and fell from the sky, bringing with it a meteor shower. Celestial meteor. This move was very terrifying. Zhuowen had been defeated by this move just now, so He Tao knew that as long as he used this move, no matter how strong he was, Zhuowen would be defeated without any chance of winning. Boom, boom, boom. Countless meteors fell and smashed into the 8 seas of blood. The terrifying fist aura exploded in the meteor shower like countless bombs exploding. Then, the 8 seas of blood that stretched as far as the eye could see all collapsed under this meteor shower. As the seas of blood collapsed, Zhuowen's figure was exposed. At this moment, He Tao's celestial meteor had completely locked onto Zhuowen's aura and swept over from all directions, sealing off all paths of retreat for Zhuowen. Looking at the countless meteors around him, Zhuowen's gaze was exceptionally calm. He slowly withdrew his 4-headed and 8-armed form and a terrifying demonic aura gushed out from his body. At this moment, it was as if a demon had awakened in Zhuowen's body. First stage of bedevilment. Boom. Boundless blood qi gushed out from Zhuo Wen's body. At that moment, Zhuo Wen's eyes were dyed red, and his black hair was dyed red. Demonic qi gushed out, making Zhuo Wen look like both a god and a demon. It was as if he was a demon from hell. Mo Sha. Zhuo Wen waved his right hand and the blood spear in his hand floated in front of him. Then, it split into 10 blood spears and revolved around Zhuo Wen's body. These 10 blood spears began to rotate and formed a blood-colored defense around Zhuo Wen's body. Boom, boom, boom. Countless meteors descended and blasted into the blood-colored defense. The dazzling starlight almost drowned Zhuo Wen's figure and a series of explosions resounded in response. He Tao floated in the air above the starlight, looking down at Zhuo Wen's figure that was submerged in the starlight. He had a feeling that Zhuo Wen, who had turned into a red-haired, red-eyed Zhuo Wen, was much stronger than before. Boom! Suddenly, a blood pillar shot up from the countless starlight below. Then, the terrifying starlight was completely annihilated by the blood pillar. What? The celestial meteor was broken? He Tao's pupils shrank and he retreated dozens of steps. He looked at the blood pillar that shot up to the sky and the starlight fist aura that was being annihilated by it. Thump, 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 thump. In the blood pillar, a young man with red hair and red eyes slowly walked out. His body was surrounded by 10 blood spears. When the young man finally stepped out of the blood pillar, he slowly raised his head and stared at He Tao with his scarlet eyes, causing the latter's heart to palpitate. Chapter 1007. Snatch bang, bang, bang. Several collisions rang out, followed by a series of muffled groans. Shichue Yuan Kong, Blue Smoke, Funji Yuan Tong, Huang Xian and Mo Lingtian spat out blood at the same time as they flew back. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 7 members of the Emperor Pavilion arrived in front of their defeated opponents and forcefully snatched their contribution point. The battle between Palm Deva and Du Tao had clearly reached its climax. Countless halberd images and sword auras intertwined in the air as the sound of metal clashing continuously rang out. When the halberd images and sword auras reached their peak, they finally turned into a terrifying explosion of light. A muffled groan resounded from the exploding ball of light. Then, a figure flew out from the ball of light. When everyone's gazes finally converged on the figure, an expression of as expected appeared on their faces. That was because the figure that flew out was the second-ranked student, Palm Deva. At this moment, Palm Deva's hair was disheveled and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. His breathing was hurried as he gasped for breath. His right hand that was holding onto the sword was slightly trembling as blood flowed out from his palm. He was in an extremely sorry state. Swoosh! A figure in his right hand smashed down from the explosion of light and smashed onto the ground. Terrifying energy spread out as a ring-shaped airwave was formed. Du Tao slowly stood up with the halberd in his hand as he indifferently stared at Palm Deva and said, "Hand over your contribution points. Although your cultivation is 1 level higher than mine and you're a sword cultivator that focuses on attacking, it's a pity that you're just a new student that has just entered the outer court. You, who have not undergone the baptism of the cultivation tower, are actually very weak. No matter how high your cultivation is, it's useless." As he spoke, Du Tao walked in front of Palm Deva and spread out his right hand as his gaze was filled with ridicule. Cultivation tower? Palm Deva, will definitely take back everything that happened today. Palm Deva's gaze was filled with unwillingness. However, it was useless no matter how unwilling he was. Although Du Tao's cultivation was lower than his, the total amount of yuan power in his body far exceeded his. The power that he could unleash was definitely several times that of an initial heavenly sovereign. The reason why the origin energy in Du Tao's body was so surging was very likely because he had tempered his meridians in the cultivation pagoda for a long time, allowing his body to contain several times more origin energy than an ordinary person, thus increasing his combat strength by tens of times. After she finished speaking, Palm Master handed over all her contribution points to Du Tao and left the square. Du Tao narrowed his eyes with a tinge of fear. This palm tree's talent was definitely strong enough. If it wasn't for the fact that he was a new student and had never cultivated in the cultivation tower, Du Tao wouldn't be a match for him. Although Du Tao was wary of Palm Tree's ruthless words, he didn't take it to heart. Palm Tree's 9,000 contribution points had been taken by him at the start. His starting point would definitely be slower than ordinary martial artists, and with these 9,000 contribution points, he could stay in the cultivation pagoda for a period of time. At that time, his cultivation could also advance to the Empyrean realm. Even if Pom Pom's meridians were tempered by the cultivation pagoda and her combat strength increased, Du Tao didn't fear her. After Palm Tree left, other than Mo Lingtian, the other 6 of the 7 new students also left the plaza with bad luck. Boom! Suddenly, an extremely terrifying aura came from not too far away, attracting the attention of many people in the plaza. Even Du Tao and the other 8 people from the Emperor Pavilion cast their gazes over. Shortly after, everyone saw that in the battle between Zhuowen and He Tao had once again used the Heaven Meteor Shower. Countless meteor-like fist energies surged out and enveloped Zhuowen from all directions. He Tao actually used the Heaven Meteor Shower. It seems like this Supreme Being new student is indeed extraordinary. But no matter how extraordinary he is, I'm afraid that he'll be seriously injured under the might of the Heaven Meteor Shower. This new student is going to suffer a great loss this time. Looking at the terrifying meteor-like fist energies, everyone was startled at first, but soon after, a mocking expression appeared on their faces. They knew that Zhuowen's fate would be very tragic under the Heaven Meteor Shower. This new student is pretty amazing to be able to force He Tao to use the Heaven Meteor Shower. Du Tao also stared at the countless meteor-like fist energies with a trace of caution in his eyes. He Tao was slightly stronger than him, and even he would be in a sorry state when facing the Heaven Meteor Shower, let alone this new student who was only at the Supreme Being realm. Boom! However, the Heaven Meteor Shower only lasted for a brief moment before a pillar of blood soared into the sky. Soon after, demonic aura surged out and the endless meteor-like fist energies crumbled inch by inch. A young man with blood-red hair and blood-red eyes stepped out of the void with 10 blood spears revolving around his body. He stared coldly at He Tao, causing the latter to involuntarily take a few steps back with an ugly expression on his face. The Heaven Meteor Shower was broken. How did this young man do it? Many older students in the plaza narrowed their eyes as they looked at Zhuowen, who was shrouded in a bloody aura. What a terrifying demonic aura! Could this new student be a demonic cultivator? There was a hint of bewilderment in Du Tao's eyes. Devil cultivators were much stronger than sword cultivators. This was an anomaly among cultivators. Once they succeeded in their cultivation, the battle prowess they could unleash was extremely terrifying. He Tao's expression was extremely grave. It seemed like he had underestimated this young man. No wonder this young man was able to obtain the first place among the new students. It wasn't a fluke, but a true achievement. Kill! Zhuowen stepped out with his blood-red hair fluttering in the wind. Along with the 10 blood spears around him, he instantly rushed towards He Tao. His bloody aura soared into the sky, forming a terrifying blood cloud in the sky. He Tao's eyes flickered. He wasn't afraid of Zhuowen at all. He blasted out a punch. The terrifying fist chi once again transformed into a monstrous meteor that rumbled towards Zhuowen. He wanted to completely crush Zhuowen. The same move doesn't have any effect on me. Zhuowen's indifferent voice sounded. He then waved his right hand, and the 10 blood spears suddenly swept out. One after another, they fell from the sky and heavily smashed in front of He Tao. He Tao's expression changed slightly, and the momentum of his fists changed. Suddenly, the countless meteor showers above him turned into a powerful meteor shower curtain, trying to block the 10 blood spears. Boom! 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 The first blood spear smashed into the meteor shower curtain, and a terrifying force poured out, causing the meteor shower curtain to tremble violently. However, the meteor shower curtain's defense wasn't bad, and it didn't show any signs of shattering. The second spear, the third spear, until the ninth spear, the force was getting stronger and stronger. The meteor shower curtain also began to tremble violently, and faintly visible cracks appeared on its surface. The 10th spear, break for me! Zhuowen shouted in a low voice. When the 10th blood spear finally smashed into the meteor shower curtain, the meteor shower curtain finally trembled violently and completely shattered into countless stars. Pucci! He Tao's expression changed. He felt a terrifying force spread out and heavily smashed into his chest. Then, he spat out a mouthful of blood and was forced to retreat 100 meters. He barely managed to stop himself as he stared at Zhuowen in front of him with dread. Silence. At this moment, the square became extremely quiet. Many of the seniors in the square knew how terrifying He Tao's combat strength was. After all, Yun Zhongyang, who was at the initial stage of the heavenly venerable realm, was easily defeated by He Tao. Originally, everyone thought that the battle between He Tao and Zhuowen would be a battle without any suspense. However, the outcome before them had greatly exceeded everyone's expectations. He Tao was defeated, and thoroughly defeated. Du Tao frowned. He didn't expect He Tao to be defeated. Was this venerable realm freshman in front of him that strong? Senior, do you still want my contribution points? Zhuowen took a step forward and instantly arrived 10 meters in front of He Tao. His scarlet eyes stared at He Tao, causing the latter to feel uncomfortable. Forcing a bitter smile, He Tao shook his head and said, "Junior, you're very strong and even this senior admits defeat. I don't want these contribution points. You can keep them for yourself. I'll take my leave first." Just as He Tao was about to leave, Zhuowen took a step forward and blocked He Tao's path. He Tao's expression froze. "Junior, what is the meaning of this?" He Tao asked helplessly. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth rose slightly and said, "Senior, don't you think it's inappropriate for you to leave like this? Senior seems to have a lot of contribution points on you. Why don't you share some with me? Just treat it as a greeting gift from me." As soon as these words came out, He Tao's expression turned extremely ugly. This Zhuowen was giving him a taste of his own medicine. He actually wanted to rob him of his contribution points. What? Senior, do you think this junior's suggestion is inappropriate? As Zhuowen spoke, the demonic intent on his body became even more terrifying. The 10 blood spears all pointed at He Tao, causing He Tao's expression to turn extremely dark. Junior brother is right. It was senior brother who was rude just now. Now that the 10 blood spears were pointed at him, He Tao had no choice but to submit. Although the academy didn't allow killing, there was no rule against crippling someone. If this Zhuowen suddenly took things too hard and crippled him, wouldn't he be done for? Seeing He Tao extend his right hand, Zhuowen also extended his right hand and collected all of He Tao's contribution points. Looking at the contribution points, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of pleasant surprise. This was because his contribution points had increased from 10,000 to 40,000. In other words, He Tao actually had 30,000 contribution points on him. He Tao's wealth wasn't small at all. "Senior, thank you for your gift." Zhuowen nodded and waved his right hand. The 10 blood spears that were surrounding He Tao returned to Zhuowen's side. He Tao let out a light sigh, his heart filled with helplessness. He originally came here to rob the freshmen of their contribution points, but he didn't expect that he would be the one to lose his contribution points because he was inferior. A dignified senior's contribution points were stolen by a freshman. This seemed to be the first time in the academy's history. "Junior, senior has some matters to attend to, so I won't stay any longer. Goodbye." After saying this, He Tao immediately fled. A dignified senior's contribution points had been stolen by a freshman. He Tao really didn't have the face to stay any longer. Chapter 1008. Suppressing Du Tao Wush. After He Tao left, Zhuowen took a step forward and arrived at Mo Lingtian's side. "Brother Mo, are you all right?" Looking at the pale Mo Lingtian, Zhuowen asked with concern. Mo Lingtian shook his head and smiled bitterly at Zhuowen. "Brother Zhuo, your strength has truly exceeded my expectations. Even He Tao was forced to flee by you." Zhuowen shook his head and looked at the contribution sheet on Mo Lingtian's wrist. He asked coldly, "Have your contribution points been stolen?" Mo Lingtian was startled at first, but soon after, he said bitterly, "It's only 1,000 contribution points. It's not a big loss." 1,000 isn't a small number, Zhuowen muttered. His sharp gaze passed through the crowd and landed on Du Tao's group of 8. He said in a clear voice, "The 8 of you should consciously hand over your contribution points." As soon as these words were spoken, the entire square immediately became silent. The gazes of all the senior students converged on Zhuowen, and there was a trace of a strange expression in their eyes. After snatching He Tao, this kid still didn't give up and planned to snatch the contribution points from Du Tao's group of 8? Although Du Tao's strength was weaker than He Tao's, it wasn't by much. He Tao was only one person, while Du Tao had 8 people. If the 8 of them joined forces, He Tao would have to flee in a sorry state. More importantly, Du Tao was a member of the Emperor Pavilion, one of the most powerful factions in the outer court. His background was much more powerful than He Tao's. As long as one knew Du Tao's background, they wouldn't casually provoke such a character. However, this kid, who had just entered the outer court not long ago, defeated He Tao in a thunderous manner and snatched away He Tao's contribution points. Now, he even planned to snatch the contribution points from Du Tao's group of 8. Arrogant. This was everyone's first thought and evaluation of Zhuowen. Du Tao and the others, who were about to leave the square, stopped in their tracks. After witnessing Zhuowen defeat He Tao, Du Tao knew that this new student, who was only at the Supreme Being realm, was a tough nut to crack. Therefore, he didn't want to cause trouble for himself. After all, they had already obtained the contribution points of 8 new students. The harvest this time was already considered pretty good. There was no need to stir up trouble, as that would not benefit them at all. But now they originally didn't want to provoke this new student, but this new student was actually arrogant enough to provoke them. Moreover, he even wanted them to voluntarily hand over their contribution points. Could it be that this kid's brain was fried? What did you just say? You want us to voluntarily hand over our contribution points? Du Tao looked at Zhuowen as if he was looking at an idiot and said coldly. Zhuowen stood up straight and nodded in a serious manner. Am I wrong? If you don't hand over your contribution points, you know the consequences. Du Tao's eyes narrowed dangerously as he said coldly, "It seems that after defeating He Tao, you're very confident in your strength. You even dare to say such words to court death. I don't have time to talk nonsense with you right now. I'm asking you, are you going to hand over your contribution points or not?" Zhuowen said impatiently. Du Tao's face stiffened and immediately revealed a look of anger. This kid is too arrogant. He even showed such an impatient attitude when speaking to me. Is he looking down on me? I originally planned to let you go, but since you took the initiative to provoke me, I won't be polite and will take your contribution points. After saying that, Du Tao stomped his foot and a terrifying aura burst out. The other 7 people beside him also released their auras and stared at Zhuowen with unkind eyes. Du Tao's cultivation was the same as He Tao's, at the peak of the Golden Venerable Realm. The 7 people beside him weren't weak either. They were all at the late-stage Golden Venerable Realm, and their auras were extremely terrifying. Mo Lingtian looked a little worried. He quickly pulled Zhuowen and said, "Brother Zhuowen, I think it's better to forget it. It's just 1,000 contribution points anyway. If you don't want it, then don't. There's no need to add to the trouble. Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, Brother Mo, don't worry, I will help you get your contribution points back. Since they provoked us, we will let them know that freshmen aren't as easy to bully as they think. After saying that, Zhuowen slowly stepped forward. Terrifying demonic aura surged out and his blood-red hair fluttered, forming a terrifying blood cloud in the sky. His demonic aura overflowed and his eyes were full of unruliness. Brothers, let's let this arrogant kid know the consequences and price of arrogance. Let's attack together. Du Tao shouted loudly. With a stomp of his foot, he brought the other 7 people and rushed towards Zhuowen. They surrounded Zhuowen, and 8 terrifying auras locked onto Zhuowen. Seeing Du Tao command the 7 people to besiege Zhuowen, the other seniors in the square felt that something was wrong. They even looked down on Du Tao's actions. However, they also knew that this freshman Zhuowen was a little abnormal. Although Du Tao thought highly of himself, he also had some self-awareness. Even He Tao had been defeated by Zhuowen, and his strength was still a bit lower than He Tao's. If it was a one-on-one fight, it was absolutely impossible for him to be this freshman's opponent. Besieging him was the safest option. This Du Tao is really despicable. He doesn't dare to fight alone. Instead, he let a group of people besiege him. Under the shade of the tree, Moyan Wushang clenched his fist and said with a slightly fluctuating voice. The dean looked at Moyan Wushang, who was a little strange, and said, This little guy is not simple. He might not lose. Kill! Du Tao shouted angrily. The sky piercer in his right hand fiercely swung down from the sky. Surging yuan power poured into the sky piercer halberd and turned into a sky full of halberd shadows. Like an endless hurricane, it swept towards Zhuowen. The other 7 people also used their strongest moves and greeted Zhuowen one after another. They didn't hold back. The colorful yuan power gathered together and formed an extremely terrifying energy ball. This ball of light contracted and expanded like a beating heart. It fell from the sky and rushed towards Zhuowen. What a terrifying attack! I didn't expect Du Tao and the others to be serious. They actually joined forces and used their full strength. Looking at the terrifying energy ball, many seniors in the square turned pale. If they were to face the combined attack of Du Tao and the others, they would undoubtedly die. Zhuowen slowly raised his head. The blood-red light in his eyes deepened as an even more terrifying demonic aura erupted from his body. Immediately, his blood-red hair grew wildly, reaching his waist. Second-level bedevilment. An indifferent voice rang out. Zhuowen stretched out his right hand and sucked towards the sky. Suddenly, the blood cloud in the sky descended and fell around Zhuowen. It rolled and surged, forming a protective force. Boom, boom, boom. The 8 people's attacks arrived as expected. Then, a violent explosion rang out. Under the collision of the energy, the whole square shook violently. Everyone in the square involuntarily retreated dozens of steps. After everyone stopped, they stared at the explosion ball with fear. They didn't expect the combined attack of Du Tao and the others to be so terrifying. Just the aftermath of the attack had such a terrifying effect. Brother Zhua, Mo Lingtian was the weakest. He almost retreated to the edge of the square. Looking at the figure of Zhuowen, who was completely submerged in the explosion ball, he couldn't help but roar. There was a touch of guilt in his eyes. If Zhuowen didn't stand up for him, he wouldn't have ended up like this. The number 1 new student is only SOSO. You actually dared to hoot in front of us. You really don't know what death is. Du Tao floated in midair, looking down at the figure submerged in the explosion ball. His eyes were filled with ridicule. He believed that Zhuowen would be seriously injured even if he didn't die from this attack. This was the consequence of provoking them. You really think that I'm only SOSO? The instant Du Tao finished speaking, a mocking voice suddenly rang out from behind Du Tao, causing Du Tao's entire body to stiffen. He was not unfamiliar with this voice. Wasn't it the new student who had hooted with them earlier? Just as Du Tao was about to turn around, he felt a powerful force rushing towards him from behind. Then, he felt a pain on his back. He directly fell from mid-air and heavily smashed into the ground. Boom! The instant Du Tao smashed onto the ground, Zhuowen followed closely behind. Before Du Tao could get up, Zhuowen ferociously stomped his foot. The terrifying strength caused the entire plaza to tremble. Du Tao even spat out a mouthful of blood, and almost fainted. His face was as pale as snow. The remaining 7 people also noticed Zhuowen. Their pupils shrank and they immediately rushed towards Zhuowen. "Get lost!" Zhuowen shouted. With a wave of his right hand, 7 blood-red mountains fell from the sky and smashed towards the 7 people. These blood-red mountains were formed by Zhuowen's slaughtered demon qi. They were extremely terrifying. At this moment, Zhuowen was already in the 2nd level of the bedevilment state. The slaughtered demon qi in his body was much more terrifying than the 1st level. Even Yuan Zhao was defeated by Zhuowen when he was in the 2nd level of the bedevilment state, let alone Du Tao and the others. Boom! 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 7 blood-red mountains fell, heavily pressing down on the 7 people. The 7 people were suppressed on the ground of the square, unable to move at all. Defeated? Du Tao and the others were defeated even after joining forces? The seniors in the square were all stunned. They stared blankly at the 7 people suppressed by the 7 blood-red mountains and Du Tao, who was under Zhuowen's foot. They only felt their minds go blank. If you had consciously handed them over earlier, you wouldn't have to suffer so much physical pain. If you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have done it in the first place. Zhuowen glanced at Du Tao under his foot indifferently. Then, he unceremoniously plundered the contribution points on Du Tao's body. After robbing Du Tao, Zhuowen slowly walked towards the 7 blood-red mountains. Then, he did the same thing and plundered the contribution points on the others. Among these 8 people, Du Tao's contribution points was undoubtedly the most. He actually had 40,000 contribution points, which was 10,000 more than Heitao's. As for the other 7 people, their contribution points were much less. The 7 of them only had about 20,000 contribution points. In an instant, he had gained 60,000 contribution points. In addition to Zhuowen's original 40,000 contribution points, Zhuowen now had 100,000 contribution points. This was a huge sum. Most of the seniors in the outer court might not be able to gather so many contribution points. Chapter 1009. Returning to their residence, Brother Mo. Take these 10,000 contribution points. These things will definitely be of great use in the cultivation tower. After collecting the contribution points from Du Tao and the rest, Zhuowen took out 10,000 of his own contribution points and gave them to Mo Lingtian, causing the latter to feel overwhelmed by the favor. Brother Zhua, isn't 10,000 contribution points too much? Mo Lingtian asked in a somewhat flustered manner. Zhuowen shook his head and said resolutely, "If you treat me as a friend, then take these contribution points." Seeing the resolute expression on Zhuowen's face, Mo Lingtian also calmed down. He nodded solemnly and said, "Brother Zhua, I won't say any more pretentious words. I, Mo Lingtian, will engrave this favor in my heart." Zhuowen nodded and continued, "Let's return to our residence first. I believe that Jianan, Gatha and Xian Xing should have been arranged to stay in their residence. Let's go find them while we're at it." Hearing this, Mo Lingtian naturally did not have any objections. Soon after, the 2 of them left the plaza under the respectful gazes of the many older students in the plaza. Du Tao and his 7 subordinates stood up one after another. Their gazes were filled with hatred as they stared at Zhuowen's departing figure. They said in a low voice, "Bastard! Don't let me find you. Once I find you, my Emperor Pavilion will definitely not let you off." After speaking, Du Tao and his group left the plaza with their tails between their legs. Speaking of which, Du Tao and his group were really unlucky. They had clearly come here to earn some extra money. However, they did not expect to encounter a monster like Zhuowen. Not only did they lose the contribution points that they had obtained, even the contribution points that they originally had were taken away by Zhuowen. This time, the 8 of them were the same as Heitao. They had suffered a double loss. From today onwards, Zhuowen's name had truly begun to spread throughout the outer court. Not only had the number 1 freshman's contribution points not been taken away, but this audacious fellow had snatched the contribution points of the seniors instead. This was the first time such arrogant behavior had happened since the establishment of the outer court. In the past, although the strength of the new students recruited by the academy was also very strong, they were all inferior to the older students. Therefore, the new students who entered the outer court for the first time would basically have their new student rewards snatched away by the older students. Even though this sort of action was slightly like the strong bullying the weak, the higher-ups of the academy turned a blind eye to it. Because the students that the outer court recruited were all top geniuses from the various regions of the outside world, and all of them were arrogant and didn't know the immensity of the heavens and the earth. Moreover, the fact that the seniors snatched the contribution points of the new students was actually a way to dampen the spirits of the new students. It let these new students know that although their talents were the top in their respective regions, they were nothing in the outer court. It was to let them cultivate in a down-to-earth manner in the future, and not to be arrogant. Therefore, it was said that the bullying of the new students by the seniors had faintly become a tradition in the outer court. However, today, the number 1 freshman, Zhuowen, had broken this tradition. Not only did he hold on to his own contribution points, but he also snatched the contribution points of the seniors. It was precisely because of such a gimmick that Zhuowen's name had spread among many seniors in the outer court. Of course, these were all things that would happen later. Currently, Zhuowen was still unaware of this matter. He was currently walking towards the residence arranged by the academy with Mo Lingtian. The 2 of them had the jade slip given by the dean, so they didn't have any embarrassing incidents like getting lost in the huge academy. The residences of the new students were uniformly arranged in a secluded bamboo forest in the northwest area of the outer court. The verdant bamboo forest, the loud and clear orioles, the elegant path, and the gentle breeze. This residence surrounded by the bamboo forest gave off a tranquil and distant feeling. Situated in this bamboo forest, Zhuowen and Mo Lingtian leisurely walked, enjoying this leisurely tranquility. I really didn't expect that I would be able to enjoy such a tranquil time. This is truly unimaginable in the world of martial artists. Mo Lingtian comfortably stretched his waist and spoke in a relaxed manner. Zhuowen nodded, a trace of a relaxed feeling in his eyes. This secluded bamboo forest seemed to have a charm that made one's heart as calm as water. Being in this bamboo forest, one's heart would always be able to naturally calm down. Narrowing his eyes, Zhuowen couldn't help but think that ever since he came to this world of martial artists, it seemed that he had never enjoyed such a relaxed and tranquil atmosphere. In the world of martial artists, other than cultivation, there was only killing. If one didn't constantly become stronger, then one would always be eliminated by this world of martial artists where the strong preyed on the weak. Therefore, ever since Zhuowen came to this world, he had never relaxed, nor did he allow himself to relax. In fact, Zhuowen had long been fed up with this kind of world. However, there were times when people couldn't help themselves. Since Zhuowen had already stepped into this world of martial artists, then he couldn't turn back. This was an endless path that couldn't be turned back. When you stepped onto this path, you would either become a stepping stone for others, forever becoming an insignificant passerby in history, or you would use others as a stepping stone to climb to a height that no one else could reach, allowing history to rewrite for you. Once you turned back, then all you would see would be countless piles of bones. That was the path that he had walked, the people that he had killed, and everything that he had missed. These past events would only bring an unbearable pressure to a martial artist. Therefore, in the world of martial artists, one couldn't turn back. One only needed to look forward, and walk down the path that one believed to be right. Once one reached the peak, then one would be able to walk a smooth path of freedom. I finally understand the meaning of the phrase, a person in Jianghu has no choice. Zhuowen muttered in a low voice, the corners of his mouth revealing a trace of a bitter smile. From time to time, new students would pass by on the small path in the bamboo forest. Those new students who passed by naturally recognized Zhuowen and Mo Lingtian. They respectfully nodded towards the two, and passed by the two. Very quickly, the two of them arrived at the depths of the bamboo forest. In the depths of the forest, there was a rather large open space. On the open space, there were rows of bamboo houses. Although the bamboo houses were simple and crude, they were rather elegant. Looks like these bamboo houses are the living quarters of us new students. However, the facilities seem a little simple and crude. Mo Lingtian frowned a little as he said. He was originally a prince of the Yanxian Empire, and usually lived a life of luxury. Hence, he had an instinctive resistance towards these simple and crude bamboo houses before him. Zhuowen shrugged his shoulders and said, I feel that these bamboo houses are not bad. Moreover, the surrounding environment is not bad either. It is quite beneficial for training one's mental state. Upon hearing Zhuowen's words, Mo Lingtian curled his lips and said, I was just casually complaining, and didn't really dislike these bamboo houses. However, I wonder if Xianxing, Jianan and Gatha are in one of the bamboo houses in this open space? Just as Mo Lingtian finished speaking, a rather excited voice was immediately transmitted from behind the two of them. Big Brother Zhuo, Big Brother Mo, the two of you have indeed returned. Upon hearing this, Zhuowen and Mo Lingtian both turned their heads to look, and immediately saw Jianan excitedly running towards them. Behind Jianan was Gatha and Xianxing. Oh? You knew that the two of us would return? After waiting for Jianan, Gatha and Xianxing to arrive in front of them, Zhuowen asked in a somewhat astonished manner. Big Brother Zhuo, other than the two of you, the other 8 of the top 10 new students have all returned. I even heard that the contribution points awarded to the 8 of them had all been taken away by the older students. We were still worried about the 2 of you, so we waited for you at the entrance of this open space. Indeed, we found you, Gatha said in a soft voice. Upon hearing this, Zhuowen and Mo Lingtian both looked at each other, and saw a gentle smile in each other's eyes. It seemed that Jianan, Gatha and Xianxing were very considerate, and had actually personally waited for them at the entrance of their living quarters. Brother Zhuo, Brother Mo, are the two of you all right? I heard that the older students are very strong, and even Pom Pom was defeated in a few moves. Although Brother Zhuo is very strong, he should not be a match for those older students. However, the two of you do not need to be discouraged. With the 2 of your talents, with the help of the cultivation tower, your strength will definitely rise very quickly. When that time comes, those older students who are trying to snatch your contribution points will be the ones who will be afraid. Xianxing stood up, her beautiful eyes looking at Zhuowen and Mo Lingtian as she softly consoled them. Evidently, she also believed that Zhuowen and Mo Lingtian would not be able to escape the fate of having their contribution points snatched away. Sister Xianxing is right. These older students rely on the cultivation tower's meridian tempering effect, allowing their yuan power to be tempered to be several times stronger than ordinary practitioners. Therefore, they are able to obtain battle strength that far surpasses their cultivation. Brother Zhuo and Brother Mo are after all in the top 10 of this year's new students. With your talents, if you also enter the cultivation tower to cultivate for a period of time, those older students will be nothing more than clowns, unable to withstand a single blow. The 2 siblings, Jianan and Gatha, also hurriedly echoed. Obviously, they did not want Zhuowen and Mo Lingtian to be traumatized by this matter. Seeing the concern in the 3's eyes, Zhuowen and Mo Lingtian did not know whether to laugh or cry. Just as Zhuowen was about to explain, a wave of noise suddenly sounded from another bamboo house, following which 2 figures came together. "It's Yun Zhongyang and Yuan Kong," Emo Lingtian said with a frown. Yun Zhongyang and Yuan Kong arrived in front of Zhuowen and Emo Lingtian at the same time. The two of them stared at Zhuowen. Yun Zhongyang opened his mouth and said, "Zhuowen, I heard that you robbed He Tao, Du Tao, and the others of their contribution points?" The moment Yun Zhongyang's words came out, Jianan, Gatha, and Xian Xing were all stunned. They even suspected that they had misheard. The 3 of them naturally knew that the He Tao and Du Tao that Yun Zhongyang mentioned were the instigators of this year's competition for the top 10 spots of the new students. However, Yun Zhongyang said that the contribution points of these 2 seniors had been robbed by Zhuowen? Zhuowen raised his eyebrows. It seemed that Yun Zhongyang and Yuan Kong were quite well informed. It had not been long since he had robbed He Tao and Du Tao, but the 2 of them had already received the news. However, what made Zhuowen a little puzzled was why the 2 of them had come over. "Brother Zhua, did you really rob He Tao and Du Tao of their contribution points?" Jianan asked with dry lips. Zhuowen was already a monster enough to obtain the top spot of the new students, but now, even the seniors could not do anything to him. Instead, the seniors had been robbed by Zhuowen. This kind of unimaginable thing had actually been done by Zhuowen. Chapter 10:10. Cultivation Tower. Hiss hiss. Jianan and the other 2 gently inhaled a breath of cold air when they saw Zhuowen nod his head in agreement. They exchanged glances and saw a trace of shock in each other's eyes. They really did not expect that not only had Zhuowen's contribution points not been snatched away by the older students, he had even snatched away the older students' contribution points. Wasn't this action a little too shocking? They knew that every new student in the outer academy would snatch away the older students' contribution points as soon as they entered. Zhuowen could be considered as the first person in history to do so. Zhuowen slowly turned his head. His densely cold gaze landed on Yun Zhongyang and Yuan Kong as he said indifferently, "Then why have the 2 of you come?" Yun Zhongyang and Yuan Kong's expressions froze. Yun Zhongyang said in a low voice, "Zhuowen, you are indeed strong enough. However, you should know that a portion of the contribution points you snatched away belonged to the top 10 of us new students. Are you going to openly take them away like this?" Zhuowen's brows raised. He finally understood why Yun Zhongyang and Yuan Kong had come. They were actually planning to ask for contribution points from him. "You mean to say that you want my contribution points?" Zhuowen's voice was slightly cold as he asked. Yun Zhongyang shook his head and said, "A portion of your contribution points is Yuan Kong's and my new student's reward. You can just return the reward that we deserve." "Did I, Zhuowen, snatch the contribution points from the 2 of you?" Zhuowen suddenly asked. Yun Zhongyang and Yuan Kong exchanged glances and shook their heads. Yun Zhongyang frowned slightly and said, "Although our contribution points were not snatched away by you, our contribution points are indeed with you." "Don't tell me," however, before Yun Zhongyang could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Zhuowen. "Since it was not snatched away by me, then what do you want from me? If you have the ability, then go take back your contribution points from He Tao." "What does this have to do with me?" Zhuowen said indifferently. "Zhuowen, don't be unreasonable. Who doesn't know that He Tao's contribution points were taken by you, so my contribution points are naturally with you. Is there any meaning in reversing right and wrong like this? If you don't hand it over, I'll have no choice but to ask the dean for help." Yun Zhongyang's voice gradually turned cold. "Yun Zhongyang, don't you think you've gone too far? These contribution points were obtained by Brother Zhuo with great difficulty. What does it have to do with you?" Emo Lingtian said coldly. He couldn't stand it any longer. "Who are you to interrupt when we're talking here? Shut up." Yun Zhongyang glared fiercely at Emo Lingtian before turning his gaze back to Zhuowen. Just as he was about to speak again, Zhuowen's voice rang out once more. "Scram!" Zhuowen slowly spat out these words. A terrifying qi burst out from his body, causing Yun Zhongyang's expression to change drastically. This Zhuowen was really unscrupulous. He actually dared to directly tell him to get lost. Zhuowen, this is the outer courtyard. It's not a place where you can run amok. You'd better restrain yourself. Yun Zhongyang still wanted to say something, but a terrifying force shot towards him like an arrow, causing his expression to change drastically. He pushed out both his palms and slammed them against the force. With a muffled groan, he took a few steps back. If you still don't scram, then I'll ask you to scram. Zhuowen slowly stood up. His gaze was bone-chilling. Yun Zhongyang and Sky Origin's expressions were extremely ugly. Their eyes flickered, but in the end the two of them didn't have the courage to face Zhuowen's anger. After all, Zhuowen wasn't even afraid of a terrifying senior like Heitao, and had even defeated the latter. Needless to say, they were no match for this kid. Zhuowen, don't think that you're amazing just because you've obtained first place among the new students. Among the numerous geniuses in the outer courtyard, you're actually nothing. Yun Zhongyang fiercely glared at Zhuowen before leaving with Sky Origin. Zhuowen's gaze flickered as he watched Yun Zhongyang and Sky Origin leave. His brows furrowed slightly. Yun Zhongyang and Sky Origin's actions of suddenly coming over to ask for contribution points made Zhuowen feel a little baffled. Moreover, he faintly felt that there was something wrong with the two of them. As for what was wrong, he couldn't put his finger on it. Yun Zhongyang and Sky Origin are really going overboard, Jianan said somewhat indignantly. Zhuowen shook his head and said somewhat indifferently, they're just two clowns. There's no need to pay too much attention to them. Also, Jianan, how are Xiang Tianzuan, Yan Di and the others? Mo Lingtian's gaze also landed on Jianan. The principal had taken the top 10 of the new students away in advance. The situation back then was urgent, so no one related to them had been informed. That was why Zhuowen had asked such a question. The Yan Di and the others from the Yanxian Empire have already left Excellent Spirit Island. He wants me to pass on a message to you. He wants you to properly cultivate in the academy. If you perform well, you'll have a chance to enter the 9th Netherworld realm. At that time, it'll be the time for you to soar. As for the 5 seniors Xiang Tianzuan, they can't enter the outer courtyard because they're not from the outer courtyard. They've found an inn in the main city and are temporarily staying there. Big Brother Zhua, if you want to see them, I can take you there, Jianan said softly. Zhuowen shook his head and said, there's no need. I'm just asking. They have my communication imprint on them. If I want to find them, I'll naturally be able to. Xiang Tianzuan and the other 4 were considered the strongest forces under Zhuowen. Zhuowen planned to nurture them, especially Xiang Tianzuan. It would be best if he could advance to the Emperor realm as soon as possible. Therefore, Zhuowen planned to enter the Azure Dragon Hall again when he became a Heavenly Venerate and bring the 5 Heavenly Venerates in. With the strength of the Azure Dragon's origin, Xiang Tianzuan and the others' cultivation would benefit greatly. Their chances of breaking through to the Emperor realm would also be much higher. Jianan, Gatha and Xianxing. How many contribution points do the 3 of you have? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Jianan and the other 2 exchanged glances, then smiled bitterly and said, we new students have very few contribution points this time. Other than the top 10 new students, the rest of us only have 100 contribution points. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded. He stretched out his right hand and transferred 5,000 contribution points from the contribution list to Jianan. Gatha and Xianxing also received 5,000 contribution points each. Brother Zhua? This. Jianan was stunned. Seeing the number of contribution points soar to 5,001, she exclaimed in surprise. On the other hand, Jia Sha and Xianxing's reactions were similar. They didn't expect that Zhuo would actually share the contribution points with them. Moreover, he directly gave each of them 5,000 contribution points. Contribution points are very important in the academy. If you don't have enough contribution points, you will be left behind from the start. This will not be beneficial to your future cultivation, Zhuowen said calmly. The three of them exchanged glances with each other before cupping their hands together in gratitude towards Zhuowen. At the same time, they also became closer to Zhuowen. Since Zhuowen was so generous as to give them 5,000 contribution points, it was obvious that he treated them as his own people. Zhuowen had a total of 100,000 contribution points. He could be considered wealthy. At the start, he gave Mo Lingtian 10,000 contribution points. Now, he took out 15,000 contribution points and distributed them to Jianan and the other two. Currently, Zhuowen still had 75,000 contribution points in his hand. Now let's go to the cultivation pagoda to take a look. It is said that the cultivation pagoda has the effect of tempering one's meridians. Moreover, for practitioners who enter the cultivation pagoda for the first time, the tempering effect is the highest. If there is a chance, it would be best for us to temper ourselves in the cultivation pagoda before coming out. That way, it would be quite beneficial to our strength. Mo Lingtian suddenly said with a smile. Brother Mo is right. Let's go to the cultivation pagoda together. Zhuowen nodded and led the group out of the depths of the bamboo forest, heading towards the cultivation pagoda. Not long after Zhuowen left, two figures walked out from the shadows. These two were Yun Zhongyang and Yuan Kong, who had asked for contribution points from Zhuowen earlier. Brother Yuan Kong, during this period of time, we need to keep track of Zhuowen's whereabouts. Once his contribution points are used up, that little bastard will definitely go out to do missions. That will be our chance to take revenge. Yun Zhongyang suddenly said in a cold voice. Yuan Kong's brows furrowed slightly as he said, "It is said that this kid has snatched quite a few contribution points. He will definitely not accept any missions from the academy in the short term. It doesn't matter. We just need to wait patiently. Not only has this guy humiliated me many times, he even killed your big brother Yuan Zhao. Will you be satisfied if this kid is not eliminated?" Yun Zhongyang suddenly said. Of course not. Right now I can't wait for this kid to die without a burial ground, Yuan Kong said through gritted teeth. The corners of Yun Zhongyang's mouth rose slightly as he said, "So what we need to do now is wait. Wait until this little bastard goes out to do missions. Once he leaves the main city, the dean will not be able to care about Zhuowen's life or death. At that time, even if this little bastard dies, the dean will not suspect the sacred dynasty behind us. After all, the death rate of the Academy's missions has always been quite high." Brother Yun is right. Right now we can only wait. Moreover, we need to keep track of this little bastard's whereabouts at all times. Yuan Kong nodded, and the two of them slowly disappeared into the shadows. The cultivation pagoda stood at the center of the academy. Surrounding the cultivation pagoda was an extremely large plaza. In this plaza, there was a sea of people bustling with activity, and it was extremely lively. Most of these people were heading towards the cultivation pagoda. Obviously, they were all planning to enter the cultivation pagoda to temper their meridians. Standing 100 meters away from the cultivation pagoda, Zhuowen, Mo Lingtian, and the other two could clearly feel the ice and fire energy being transmitted from the cultivation pagoda. A moment ago, it was blazing hot, but in the next moment, it was as cold as an ice cellar. Standing near the cultivation pagoda, it was as if they were standing in a world of ice and fire. What powerful ice and fire energy! The cultivation pagoda in the outer courtyard is really mysterious. These two extreme energies, ice and fire, can actually exist together in such harmony. Mo Lingtian said with some emotion. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He could faintly feel that the ice and fire saint symbol's origin in the cultivation pagoda was much stronger than the one he had obtained. Even the ice and fire saint symbol in his hands began to tremble. "Kid, you can feel it too, right?" The origin of the ice and fire saint symbol in the cultivation pagoda is quite powerful. I'm afraid that an expert from the inner courtyard forcefully stripped a part of the ice and fire saint symbol's origin and sealed it under the cultivation pagoda with a supreme secret technique. Moreover, there are layers of powerful origin arrays in the cultivation pagoda. Chapter 10:11. The price of the cultivation pagoda. Zhuowen nodded. The holy ice-fire rune he had obtained from Ba Shui was incomplete. It was only a trace of the holy ice-fire rune's origin. It could be said that it was extremely rare. This was also the reason why the holy ice-fire rune was of less help to Zhuowen as his strength increased. In the final analysis, the holy symbol of ice-fire in his hand was only a trace of the origin, and the power of the holy symbol of ice-fire was too little. If Zhuowen had the complete holy symbol of ice-fire, his strength would have risen to an extremely terrifying level. However, the ice-fire energy contained in the cultivation pagoda was many times stronger than the holy ice-fire rune in his hand. Obviously, the holy ice-fire rune's origin was much stronger than the one Zhuowen had obtained. Xiao He, do you think it's possible for me to snatch the holy ice-fire rune's origin sealed in the cultivation pagoda? Zhuowen suddenly asked in a whimsical manner. Boy, are you dreaming? Don't tell me you don't know how powerful the holy rune's energy is? When you refined that trace of origin, you also relied on the power of the rune spirit to succeed. The holy rune's origin in the cultivation pagoda is much stronger than the one you have. With your current strength, trying to snatch such a powerful origin is simply courting death. Unless you have already controlled the rune spirit, you will definitely be devoured by the ice-fire rune's origin in the cultivation pagoda. At that time, you won't even know how you died. Xiao He said coldly. Zhuowen shrugged and said, I'm naturally aware of that, and I was merely thinking about it. However, the quintessence within this cultivation pagoda is formidable. Just these terrifying seals and restrictions outside the pagoda aren't something that I can deal with. It's good that you know. You have a trace of the holy ice-fire talisman's origin. You can't let the people of the Divine Academy know about this. If they find out, they will definitely order you to hand it over. They might even convict you. At that time, you won't be able to clear your name even if you jump into the Yellow River, Xiao He continued to warn. Zhuowen nodded solemnly. Back when he was in the Qingxian Empire, not many people knew about the existence of sacred talismans. Therefore, when Zhuowen used the Ice Flame sacred talisman, he was not recognized. However, he was currently in the Jiaxin Institute. This was a world much larger than the Azure Xian Empire. Experts were as common as clouds, and there were probably many people who knew about the existence of the holy talisman. If Zhuowen rashly exposed the Ice-Fire Saint Talisman, it was very likely that he would get into trouble. After all, Zhuowen was not stupid. He would not easily expose the Ice-Fire Saint Talisman unless his strength reached a certain level. Brother Zhuo, shall we enter the cultivation pagoda to take a look? Mo Lingtian asked Zhuowen. Go. Let's go in and take a look. Zhuowen nodded. There was a trace of anticipation in his eyes. He wanted to see if the cultivation pagoda was really as magical as the seniors had said. It could actually increase one's strength by several times or even dozens of times by tempering one's meridians. The cultivation pagoda was divided into 10 levels. Zhuowen, Mo Lingtian, and the rest followed the flow of people to the first level of the cultivation pagoda. Behind the arched door was a large living room. The floor was covered with smooth tiles. Although there were many people inside, the living room was large and did not seem crowded at all. In front of the living room, there were 5 aisles. At the entrance of each aisle, there was a glass counter. On the counter stood a woman in a cheongsam with a smile. What surprised Zhuowen was that the cultivation of the 5 cheongsam women standing on the counter was not low. The lowest cultivation was in the Xuanzuan realm, and the highest was in the sovereign realm. Zhuowen led Mo Lingtian to a counter. The Chong Sam woman in front of the counter immediately looked at Zhuowen and the rest with a smile. Junior brothers and junior sisters, which level of the cultivation room do you intend to enter? The Chong Sam woman asked with a smile. Junior brothers and junior sisters? Senior sister is also a student of the outer court? Zhuowen and the rest were surprised. Looking at the way the Chong Sam woman addressed them, it seemed that she was also a student of the outer court. They had thought that she was just a staff member. The Chong Sam woman also saw the surprise on Zhuowen and the rest's faces. Her beautiful eyes flickered as if she had thought of something. She smiled and said, "The 5 of you are new students? At first, you didn't think that I was a staff member of the academy, did you?" Zhuowen and the rest looked at each other and smiled awkwardly. At first, they did think that the Chong Sam woman was a staff member. Moreover, they did not expect that the students of the outer court would not enter the cultivation room to cultivate. Instead, they worked as service staff at the counter. To tell you the truth, there are no staff members in the outer court. The chores in the cultivation room are all assigned by the students of the outer court. The Chong Sam woman seemed to have thought of something and explained with a bitter smile. The chores are also done by the students? Don't the students need to cultivate? Jianan asked curiously. Junior brother, you have not lived in the outer court, so you naturally do not know the cruelty of the outer court. The annual tuition fee of the outer court is 20,000 contribution points. If you are unable to gather 20,000 contribution points in a year, you will be expelled by the academy. Moreover, cultivation requires contribution points. If you do not have contribution points, you do not have the qualifications to enter the cultivation tower to cultivate. Other than that, the resources, weapons, chi methods and so on that you need will not be given to you for free by the academy. You will need contribution points to exchange for them. At this point, the bitterness on the Chong Sam woman's pretty face became even more intense. She continued, "If you have contribution points in the outer court, you will be able to obtain everything you want. However, if you do not have contribution points, it will be difficult for you to move forward. You might even face the danger of being expelled. To the monstrous geniuses of the outer court, it is very easy for them to obtain contribution points. After all, they are very powerful. They only need to complete a few missions of high difficulty and high reward. In one go, they will be able to obtain tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of contribution points. However, ordinary students are unable to do so. In order to allow ordinary students to survive, the Academy has arranged many miscellaneous jobs in the Academy. As long as you complete these miscellaneous jobs, you will be able to obtain some contribution points as a reward. This counter service is one of the miscellaneous jobs that I have obtained." Hearing these words, Zhuowen, Mo Lingtian and the rest were startled. They had just entered and were completely unaware that doing miscellaneous jobs would also give them contribution points as a reward. However, they also knew that the rewards for such miscellaneous jobs would definitely not be very high. If it was a student with an ordinary aptitude, perhaps they would be willing to do such low-paying and boring miscellaneous jobs. However, those who were talented and powerful would definitely choose to do those high-risk and high-reward missions. The Chong Sam woman in front of them was only at the middle stage of the Xuanzuan realm. Looking at her age, she should be around 26 years old. Her aptitude was indeed not as good as those talented geniuses. However, in the outside world, she was considered a rare genius. Zhuowen and the rest nodded their heads as they sighed in their hearts. It seemed that the Academy also followed the law of the jungle. The stronger one was, the stronger one would naturally be, and the weaker one would gradually fade into the crowd. Since they were unable to make themselves stronger, the weak would ultimately choose to be content with the status quo. It could even be said that they were satisfied with the miscellaneous jobs that the Academy had arranged for them. However, They did not know that this would only cause the gap between them and the other geniuses to become larger and larger. In the end, it would form an insurmountable gap. However, these were the choices of others. Zhuowen naturally would not meddle in other people's business. He only wanted to ensure that he would constantly become stronger and be able to protect the people and things that he cherished. Senior, can you introduce us to this cultivation pagoda? After all, we are also new students who have just arrived. We really do not know anything about this cultivation pagoda. Zhuowen suddenly asked with a smile. The Cheongsam woman nodded her head. This was her job and she naturally would not refuse. You guys have also seen it. The cultivation pagoda is divided into 10 floors. Every floor has many private rooms. Within these private rooms, there is an enormous amount of ice and fire energy. These ice and fire energy can temper the meridians. Of course, the effect of tempering the meridians on each floor of the cultivation pagoda is different. The first floor's effect is the worst. As the number of floors increases, the effect of tempering will also gradually increase. The 10th floor's effect is the best. Of course, it also requires the most contribution points. The Cheongsam woman indifferently explained. Senior, can you introduce us to the price of each floor of the cultivation pagoda? Jianan suddenly asked. The Cheongsam woman nodded her head and continued. The first floor's price is 10 contribution points per hour. The second floor's price is 20 contribution points per hour and so on. The 10th floor's price is 100 contribution points per hour. As soon as these words were spoken, Zhuowen, Mo Lingtian, and the other 4 all frowned. The price of this cultivation pagoda was very expensive. Just the first floor's price was 10 contribution points per hour. That meant that one day, 12 hours would cost 120 contribution points. 1 month would cost 3,600 contribution points, and 1 year would cost 43,200 contribution points. This was a huge sum of money. Even on the first floor, there might not be anyone who had so many contribution points. The amount of contribution points required to stay in there for a year was just too much. What was even more abnormal was the 10th floor. Every hour required 100 contribution points. The price was 10 times that of the first floor. In other words, staying on the 10th floor for a year would cost more than 400,000 contribution points. This was just too terrifying. As everyone knew, a martial artist's cultivation was usually measured in years. With the cultivation pagoda's price being so expensive, some martial artists who did not have much wealth would only be able to cultivate in the cultivation pagoda for a few days. Even martial artists who had a lot of contribution points would find it difficult to cultivate in the cultivation pagoda for more than half a year. After all, the price was just too high. Juniors, you are all new students. You should have never tempered your meridians in the cultivation pagoda, right? However, I need to remind you that the first tempering of your meridians is extremely important. You must stay in there for a month. This way, the first tempering of your meridians will be perfect. In the future, it will also be able to expand your meridians and build a solid foundation. Chapter 10-12. 10th level of the cultivation tower. Seeing the serious expression on the Cheongsam lady's pretty face, Zhuowen and the rest also knew the importance of the first month. Fortunately, regardless of whether it was Jianan's trio or himself and Mo Lingtian, their contribution points had already exceeded the minimum of 3,600 points. Big brother Zhuowen, let's start tempering on the first level for a month first. Jianan suddenly said to Zhuowen. Zhuowen nodded his head. Jianan, Gatha and Xianxing had a total of 5,100 contribution points, which was enough to train on the first level for a month. Senior sister, help the 3 of us to open a private room on the first level. Seeing that Zhuowen had agreed, Jianan said to the Cheongsam lady, the 3 of you have 3,600 contribution points on you? Seeing that Jianan and the other two from the Xuanzuan realm actually planned to open a private room on the first level for a month, the Cheongsam lady was a little surprised. She knew that the outer court's recruitment of new students had just ended. Generally speaking, it was impossible for new students to have so many contribution points on them. Unless the three of them were among the top 10 new students this time and had obtained the new student reward. However, the three of them only had the cultivation of the Xuanzuan realm. Generally speaking, it was not very possible for them to enter the top 10 new students. With a doubtful expression, the Cheongsam lady's gaze involuntarily landed on the contribution points on the wrists of Jianan and the other two. When she saw that their contribution points were all 5,100, she was completely stunned. 3 practitioners from the Xuanzuan realm were able to have so many contribution points the moment they entered? Wasn't this too inconceivable? Fortunately, the Cheongsam lady's mental fortitude was not bad and she quickly regained her senses. Although she was very confused in her heart, she still dutifully opened 3 private rooms for Jianan and the other two. At the same time, she also deducted 3,600 contribution points from their contribution point. Big Brother Zhua, Big Brother Emo, will go to the private rooms first. After the Cheongsam lady opened the private rooms, she took out 3 jade keys and handed them to Jianan and the other two. After the 3 of them greeted Zhuowen and Mo Lingtian, they excitedly walked towards their respective private rooms. From their appearance, it was obvious that they could not wait to try out the might of the cultivation tower. Brother Mo, which floor do you intend to go to? Zhuowen suddenly asked Mo Lingtian. Mo Lingtian shrugged his shoulders and helplessly said, "My limit should be the 2nd floor. Moreover, it seems that the higher you go, the better the effect is. Naturally, I will choose the 2nd floor." As he spoke, Mo Lingtian booked a private room on the 2nd floor with the Cheongsam lady. This caused the Cheongsam lady to be even more surprised. How could each of these new students be so wealthy? She really didn't know how they got their contribution points. After Mo Lingtian received the corresponding jade key, he greeted Zhuowen and walked up the stairs at the end of the hall to the 2nd floor. When it was Zhuowen's turn, the Cheongsam lady's beautiful eyes stared at Zhuowen. Just now, she could see that this young man in front of her should be the leader of the 5 people. The other 4 people followed his lead. She knew that this young man should have the most contribution point. "Junior, are you planning to open a private room on the 3rd floor?" The Cheongsam lady smiled tenderly and asked. However, Zhuowen shook his head and said something that caused the Cheongsam lady to be stunned. "Senior, please open a private room on the 10th floor for me." The Cheongsam lady's smile froze. She even suspected that she was hearing things. This new student in front of her actually said that he was planning to open a private room on the 10th floor. Could it be that he was joking? "Junior, did you make a mistake just now? Are you really planning to open a private room on the 10th floor? You must know that staying on the 10th floor for a month costs 36,000 contribution points." After regaining her senses, the Cheongsam lady reluctantly revealed a trace of a smile. 36,000 contribution points to the Cheongsam lady was already a huge sum of money. After all, her annual remuneration for working in the cultivation tower did not exceed 30,000 contribution points. However, this new student in front of her actually planned to spend such a huge sum of money to stay on the 10th floor for a month. This could no longer be described as extravagant. It must be known that generally, the martial artists who cultivated on the 10th floor of the cultivation tower were basically the top geniuses of the students or members of powerful forces within the academy. Ordinary students simply did not have the financial resources to stay on the 10th floor. Looking at the Cheongsam lady's expression, Zhuowen also knew that the former did not believe that he had so many contribution points in his hands. In desperation, Zhuowen could only show the contribution points in his hands to the Cheongsam lady. However, the moment the 75,000 contribution points appeared in the Cheongsam lady's eyes, she immediately fell into a state of shock. This young man in front of her actually had 75,000 contribution points. Was this a joke? Was this the contribution points that a new student could have? It seems that Senior has misunderstood Junior. Senior will immediately open a private room on the 10th floor for you. After regaining her senses, the Cheongsam lady nimbly took out a jade key and handed it over to Zhuowen. At the same time, she also deducted 36,000 contribution points from Zhuowen's contribution points form. After taking the jade key, Zhuowen was about to leave the living room and head to the 10th floor when the Cheongsam lady suddenly asked, "Junior, are you really a new student?" Zhuowen was startled for a moment, but soon after, he smiled and said, "Guaranteed to be genuine. Otherwise, how could Junior not even know the distribution of the cultivation tower, and need to ask Senior?" Hearing this, the Cheongsam lady was startled. Soon after, she clenched her teeth and said, "Can you tell me your name?" Zhuowen, an indifferent voice entered the Cheongsam lady's ears. Soon after, Zhuowen's figure walked towards the depths of the living room. As the Cheongsam lady looked at the back of that figure, a trace of absent-mindedness appeared in her eyes. Her mouth muttered, "Zhuowen? This name seems somewhat familiar?" When Zhuowen's figure finally disappeared from the Cheongsam lady's sight, the Cheongsam lady's beautiful eyes suddenly focused. She almost cried out in surprise. She finally knew why the name Zhuowen was so familiar. It was because today, there was a rather sensational news whose main character seemed to be called Zhuowen. It was said that Zhuowen was this year's new student's number one. His strength was unfathomable. The outer court's elite, He Tao, originally wanted to snatch Zhuowen's contribution points. However, in the end, he was defeated by Zhuowen and his contribution points were snatched instead. Moreover, the members of the Emperor Pavilion, Du Tao and the other 8, were suppressed by Zhuowen. Without exception, their contribution points were snatched away. This was the first time in the history of the outer court that a new student snatched the contribution points of an old student. Therefore, when this matter happened, the news was like a flood and ferocious beast, crazily spreading throughout the outer court. Even the Cheongsam lady had heard of Zhuowen's name. However, the Cheongsam lady never expected that she would actually personally meet the new student who was at the center of public opinion. The Cheongsam lady didn't know how to describe her current mood and feeling. Regarding the Cheongsam lady's inner thoughts, Zhuowen naturally didn't know. The current him was walking up the stairs, step by step, towards the top of the tower. The instant he walked up the stairs, Zhuowen felt an extremely surging ice and fire energy. This ice and fire energy drilled into his body and flowed along his meridians. Although he wasn't used to it at first, Zhuowen gradually felt a comfortable feeling throughout his body. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that the meridians in his body actually felt a trace of smoothness under the flow of the ice and fire energy. It seemed that what the dean said was right. This ice and fire energy did indeed have the miraculous effect of tempering meridians. After all, Zhuowen was only on the stairs now. The ice and fire energy that he came in contact with was the most superficial. If Zhuowen entered the private room, he would come in contact with the essence of the ice and fire energy. The tempering effect would definitely be much stronger. Dang, dang, dang. Following the stairs to the top of the tower, Zhuowen also discovered that the higher he went, the denser the ice and fire energy, the better the tempering effect on his meridians. Very quickly, Zhuowen reached the 10th floor. The 10th floor also had a living room. Around the living room were stone doors that were several feet tall. On the right side of the stone doors there were small keyholes. These keyholes should be the places where the jade keys should be inserted. The corresponding jade keys corresponded to the corresponding stone doors. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that there were quite a few figures sitting cross-legged in the empty space in the living room. The auras of these figures were very powerful and vast. Their cultivations were basically at the Golden Exalt realm, and the strongest had even reached the peak of the Golden Exalt realm. Perhaps because they discovered that someone had come up, these figures slowly opened their eyes and shot their gazes towards Zhuowen. When they saw that Zhuowen was only at the late stage of the Supreme Being realm, a trace of astonishment appeared in their eyes. Clearly, in their opinion, a mere Supreme Being realm actually came up to the 10th floor. It was really a little strange. Supreme Being realm trash actually dared to come to the living room of the 10th floor to freeload the ice and fire energy. You've got guts. A mocking voice sounded, causing Zhuowen's eyes to narrow slightly. He turned his head and immediately fixed his gaze on a man. This man was dressed in a black robe and had short brown-green hair. He was about 27 or 28 years old. At this moment, he was looking at Zhuowen with a mocking expression, as if he was looking at a joke. This man's aura was considered relatively low among the group of people in the living room. His cultivation was around the early stage of the Golden Exalt realm. Freeload the ice and fire energy? What do you mean by that? Zhuowen indifferently asked the man. The green-haired man, who originally had a mocking expression, didn't expect Zhuowen to suddenly ask such a question. His face froze, and a trace of astonishment appeared in his eyes. However, very quickly, anger appeared on his face. He felt that this young man in front of him was teasing him. The green-haired man stood up with a cold gaze and said with a cold expression, "Are you teasing me by asking a question that you already know the answer to?" "Teasing you? I didn't mean that. It's just that I don't know what freeloading the ice and fire energy means." Zhuowen slightly frowned and said with a frown. Looking at Zhuowen's expression, the green-haired man knew that Zhuowen wasn't lying. His eyes flickered as he said, "It seems that you don't know anything? Could it be that you're a new student who just joined the academy this time?" Zhuowen nodded and didn't deny it. The other men in the living room, who were sitting cross-legged, revealed expressions of understanding. No wonder this young man didn't know anything. It turned out that he was a newborn calf. A mere new student actually dares to come to the 10th floor to freeload the ice and fire energy. I really admire your courage. However, your attitude just now wasn't very good, so I'm not in a good mood. As your senior, I have to teach you a lesson. Chapter 10-13. Snatching the jade key. Looking at the green-haired man slowly walking over, the chilliness in Zhuowen's eyes grew even colder. He, Zhuowen, had never provoked this green-haired man, yet the latter actually wanted to teach him a lesson without distinguishing between right and wrong. Did he really think that Zhuowen was a pushover? "Kid, before I deal with you, let me tell you what it means to freeload the ice and fire energy. The contribution points we have aren't enough to pay for the rooms on the 10th floor, but just the ice and fire energy in this living room is already comparable to the density of the rooms on the 1st floor. Generally speaking, Supreme Being students don't have the qualifications to freeload the ice and fire energy on the 10th floor. So, you've crossed the line. If you understand, the next step is for the seniors to educate the juniors." As he spoke, the green-haired man arrived in front of Zhuowen. The chilliness in his eyes grew even more intense. He was originally the weakest member on this floor. Usually, he would be afraid to freeload the ice and fire energy here. Faced with such a situation, the green-haired man had long been suppressing his anger in his heart. But now, a Supreme Being kid with a lower cultivation than him had come. Therefore, he was prepared to vent the anger in his heart on Zhuowen. "I understand." Zhuowen nodded, pretending to be serious. So that's how it was. No wonder he could see many cultivators sitting cross-legged in the living room on every floor when he ascended the stairs. It turned out that they were freeloading the ice and fire energy that flowed out from the rooms for free. However, although the living room was large enough, there were even more students in the academy. It could be said that there were too many monks and too little gruel. Without a certain level of strength, it was really impossible to freeload a good place. Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the late stage of the Supreme Being stage, but he had come to the 10th floor. In the eyes of the green-haired man and the others, he was overestimating himself. Perhaps, even if the green-haired man didn't make a move, the others would have. After all, in their eyes, Zhuowen's actions were crossing the line. Zhuowen's calm attitude caused the green-haired man to be a little surprised. However, he sneered in his heart, thinking that Zhuowen was just forcing himself to be calm. Do you understand? I'm afraid you don't understand the current situation at all. As he spoke, the green-haired man's aura erupted to the extreme. Then, he clenched his right hand into a fist and swung it towards Zhuowen. The might of this punch was extraordinary. If an ordinary exalted realm cultivator were to be struck by it, they would definitely be heavily injured. He's really a newborn calf. He's actually scared stiff on the spot. Seeing the green-haired man's fist coming at him, Zhuowen didn't take any defensive stance. He just stood there indifferently and looked at the fist energy that was whizzing towards him. In the eyes of the other people in the living room, this Supreme Being Realm youth was probably scared silly. When everyone imagined that Zhuowen would be seriously injured, they saw Zhuowen slowly stretch out his hand and pinch the green-haired man's right fist. Then, Zhuowen suddenly twisted it, and the crisp sound of bones cracking echoed in the living room. Ah! Soon after, a miserable shriek was heard. Subsequently, the green-haired man, who was originally full of confidence and arrogance, had his face completely turned purple. His right hand was already twisted at an irregular angle, and was being held in Zhuowen's hand. The people in the living room, who were originally full of ridicule, fell silent. Even the sneers on their faces had completely stiffened as they stared blankly at this scene. The green-haired man's cultivation was at the initial stage of the Golden Exalt realm. Although he was at the bottom of the group, it should be more than enough to deal with a late-stage Supreme Being Realm cultivator. But now, the late-stage Supreme Being Realm cultivator, who should have been crushed, was standing on the spot. On the other hand, the green-haired man's hand had been crushed and he was screaming miserably. "Senior, didn't you want to deal with me? What's going on now? Why haven't you dealt with me yet?" Zhuowen's voice was very calm as he pinched the green-haired man's right hand. It slowly sounded in the living room, causing many people to squint their eyes. It seemed that this late-stage Supreme Being Realm freshman was not simple. He could actually defeat an initial-stage Golden Exalt Realm cultivator so easily. The green-haired man could not explain his suffering. He did not expect that Zhuowen, who he thought was a soft persimmon, would turn out to be a tough nut to crack. Not only did he not gain any benefits, but he also got himself into trouble. "Junior, I was just joking just now. I was just joking. Don't take it too seriously. Let me go, please?" The green-haired man quickly begged for mercy. "Get lost." Zhuowen could not be bothered with the arrogant green-haired man. He kicked his waist, causing the green-haired man to retreat dozens of steps. Then, Zhuowen looked at the surrounding stone doors as if nothing had happened. As for the green-haired man, after Zhuowen let go of his hand, he hurriedly covered his dislocated right arm and left the 10th floor dejectedly. Retrieving the jade key from his spirit ring, he noticed that the jade key was engraved with the number 37. Obviously, this jade key was the key to the 37th room. When Zhuowen took out the jade key, the group of people in the living room narrowed their eyes, causing a commotion. Originally, they thought that Zhuowen came up to the 10th floor to freeload the ice and fire energy. But now, Zhuowen took out the jade key to the stone door. They knew that they were wrong. This guy was not there to freeload the ice and fire energy. He was there to enter the 10th floor's room. At this moment, many people in the living room revealed a greedy look. The contribution points needed to enter the 10th floor were too many. They did not have so many contribution points to spend in the 10th floor's room. So, they could only freeload the ice and fire energy in this way. As for those people who wanted to rob the 10th floor's rooms, they did not think of it. However, those who could open rooms on the 10th floor were all terrifying geniuses in the outer court. The weakest of them was at the early stage of the heavenly venerable realm. Even if they wanted to, they did not have the gut. However, The young man in front of them was obviously a new student who did not know anything. Although he had some strength, he did not have any background. Snatching this kind of newborn calf did not require any effort at all. They did not even have to worry about the big background behind him causing trouble. Looking around the stone doors in front of him, Zhuowen quickly found the 37th room. However, just as Zhuowen was about to take out the jade key and open the 13th room, 3 whistling sounds suddenly came from behind him. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He suddenly sensed that among the group of people in the living room, there were actually 3 people rushing towards him. Moreover, the auras of these 3 people were very strong, far stronger than that of the green-haired man. They were actually ancient martial art practitioners at the peak of the golden venerable realm. With a stomp of his feet, Zhuowen was like a nimble fish as he instantly dodged to the side, dodging the attacks of the 3 men behind him. Then, Zhuowen slowly turned around and stared coldly at the 3 men in front of him who had missed. It's actually the 3 brothers, Ling Su, Ling Yi, and Ling Huan. I did not expect the 3 of them to make a move. Nonsense. This young man at the Supreme Realm has a jade key to a room. Although his battle strength is not weak, he is only at the Supreme Realm. Moreover, he is a new student and does not have any background. Who would resist the temptation to rob him? Whispers rang out in the living room. The rest of the people, who were originally ready to make a move, quietened down after seeing the 3 brothers and suppressed the restlessness in their hearts. The 3 brothers were the strongest among the group of people on the 10th level. They were at the peak of the golden venerable realm, and no one dared to offend them. Hand over the jade key and get out of the 10th level. The eldest brother, Ling Su, slowly walked out and stared coldly at Zhuowen. Originally, the 3 of them were not interested in the battle between Zhuowen and the green-haired man. After watching for a while, they each went back to their own seats to cultivate. However, at this moment, Zhuowen took out the jade key to the room and finally attracted the attention of the 3 brothers. In fact, they were even greedy for it. The young man before them was only a new student and his cultivation was only at the advanced stage of the Supreme Realm. However, he had the jade key to the room. This was an extremely tempting bait for the 3 brothers. How could they let go of such an opportunity to enter the room for free? Hand over the jade key to you? Get out of the room? Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said coldly. Ling Su nodded and said arrogantly, "Don't tell me you don't understand my words? If you don't want to lose an arm or break a leg, you'd better hand over the jade key. I don't want to waste my energy." Ling Yi and Ling Hao stood on either side of Ling Su with their arms crossed. They stared indifferently at Zhuowen, as if they were certain that Zhuowen would be defeated. "You are really shameless. How can you say it so naturally when you want to take things by force? Your skin has already reached a new level." Zhuowen suddenly mocked. The 3 brothers' eyes darkened. Ling Su stomped his foot and said, "It seems that you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. In that case, don't blame me for being rude." With that, Ling Su stomped his foot and instantly swept towards Zhuowen. A terrifying aura swept out from his back and turned into a giant eagle with its wings spread. The eagle's sharp eyes stared coldly at Zhuowen, as if the latter was its prey. Ling Yi and Ling Hao did not make a move. Ling Su was at the peak of the golden venerate realm, while Zhuowen was only at the advanced stage of the Supreme Realm. This was a battle without any suspense. They all knew that Zhuowen would lose without a doubt. Boom! A terrifying demonic will suddenly gushed out from Zhuowen's body. Then, Zhuowen immediately entered the first level of the bedevilment realm. The terrifying demonic will rolled out and turned into countless killing demonic chi. Looking at Zhuowen, whose aura suddenly surged, Ling Su's eyes changed slightly. He did not expect that the young man before him would have such a strong demonic will. Demonic cultivator? Murmuring softly, Ling Su's attack had already landed. The giant eagle behind him let out a shrill cry and suddenly descended from the sky, flying towards Zhuowen. Its sharp claws enveloped Zhuowen, as if it wanted to tear Zhuowen apart. Die! Zhuowen spat out this word indifferently. Then, a terrifying demonic will of slaughter surged out. He stretched out his hand and formed a mountain-like blood-red hand, grasping the giant eagle in his hand. A wail sounded. The giant figure was trapped in the blood-red hand and was unable to extricate itself. Chapter 10:14. Get lost. Damn it! How can he be so strong? Ling Su's pupils constricted. With a roar, the aura on his body surged out. He clasped his hands together and a terrifying Yuanli surged out. Suddenly, countless eagle shadows appeared and formed a defense in front of him. Break! Zhuowen's indifferent voice resounded. Then, the terrifying crimson hand crushed everything like a 10,000-foot master. The eagle shadow defense could not withstand for long before it crumbled inch by inch. Spurt! Ling Su spat out a mouthful of blood and flew out. His face was as pale as snow. Zhuowen did not intend to let Ling Su go. With a wave of his right hand, the crimson hand swept out and pinched Ling Su. Big brother! Ling Yi and Ling Huan roared as they rushed out. Terrifying Yuan power surged out in an attempt to save Ling Su, who was being pinched by the crimson hand. Zhuowen's gaze was cold. With a stomp of his foot, two large blood-red hands swept out. Ling Yi and Ling Hao were slightly weaker than Ling Su, so it was impossible for them to resist the grasp of the large blood-red hands. They were caught by the large blood-red hands in a few moves. The entire hall fell into a strange silence. The students who were about to make a move froze on the spot as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over them. They did not expect Zhuowen's strength to be so terrifying. The three brothers, Ling Su, Ling Yi, and Ling Huan, were at the peak of the Golden Venerate realm. However, they could not even withstand one move from the youth at the advanced stage of the Supreme Being realm and were captured alive. Some of the students who were about to make a move rejoiced in their hearts. Fortunately, they did not act rashly. Otherwise, they would end up in a worse state than the three brothers. Too weak. The three of you only have this much strength, and you intend to snatch the jade key from me. Where did you three trash get your confidence from? Zhuowen stared at the three brothers, who were being pinched by the crimson hand, and said indifferently. Ling Su and the other two were far weaker than He Tao and Du Tao. Although they were all at the peak of the Golden Venerable realm, they were only slightly stronger than ordinary peak Golden Venerables. However, He Tao and Du Tao both had the battle prowess of an early-stage Heavenly Venerable. Clearly, within the Outer Academy, even if one's cultivation level was the same, there was still a huge gap between their fighting strength. Some people were able to casually jump levels to fight, while others could only allow others to jump levels to fight. The gap was not an ordinary kind of large. The eyelids of the three Ling Su brothers twitched as a trace of regret surfaced in their eyes. If they knew that the fighting strength of this young man before them was so terrifying, they would never have provoked Zhuowen even if they were beaten to death. Junior, in the future, we won't dare to provoke you anymore. Please spare me? Lingshu braced himself and could only admit defeat. At first, the three of you saw that my cultivation was low and thought that I was a pushover. Now that you think that I'm a pushover, you're begging for mercy. How can there be such an easy thing in this world? Zhuowen said coldly. Then what do you want? Lingshu's face was pale as he braced himself to ask again. Zhuowen's gaze was extremely calm as he continued. Hand over your contribution points and get out of the 10th level. Otherwise, I don't mind breaking your arms and legs. Hearing Zhuowen's naked threat, the eyes of the three Ling Su brothers flickered and their faces were extremely ugly. This sentence was exactly the same as what Lingshu had said previously. Obviously, Zhuowen was returning the favor. What? You don't want to hand it over? Zhuowen's voice suddenly turned cold. Immediately, the force of the crimson hand became extremely terrifying, causing the three Ling Su brothers to involuntarily cry out in pain. We'll hand it over. Let us go. The three Ling Su brothers broke out in cold sweat as they hurriedly said. Zhuowen nodded. With a wave of his right hand, the crimson hand that was holding the 3 Ling Su brothers loosened. The 3 Ling Su brothers fell to the ground and cried out in pain. Hand it over! Zhuowen took a big stride forward to the 3 Ling Su brothers and said indifferently as he spread out his right hand. The Ling Su trio exchanged glances with each other. All of them revealed a bitter expression as they obediently handed over the contribution points in their hands to Zhuowen. After all, they were currently in a stronger position, and they did not dare to disobey Zhuowen's request. Although no one was allowed to kill anyone in the academy, if someone used underhanded means to cripple you, even the academy would not be too calculative about this matter. After all, it was inevitable that there would be friction between cultivators. When there was friction, there would be injuries. As long as no one was killed, the academy would not meddle in other people's business. After handing over all their contribution points to Zhuowen, the 3 Ling Su brothers left the 10th level with their tails between their legs. They could not stay here for a moment longer. Moreover, Ling Su and the other 2 were indeed poor. The 3 of them only had 6,000 contribution points in total. To Zhuowen, this amount of contribution points was really a small amount. Who else wants this jade key? Zhuowen looked around the living room with a chilling gaze. Instantly, the entire living room fell into silence. No one answered and everyone maintained their silence. What a joke! Even the 3 Ling Su brothers were defeated by this person. How would they dare to compete with this person? Wouldn't that be asking for a snub? Seeing that everyone in the living room was silent, the corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up slightly. It seemed that defeating the 3 Ling Su brothers in a thunderous manner had a great deterrent effect. I want this jade key of yours. Suddenly, a cold snort sounded from the entrance of the stairs to the 10th level, attracting the attention of everyone in the living room. Thud, thud, thud. What followed was the clear sound of footsteps on the stairs. A beautiful figure slowly appeared in everyone's line of sight. This woman was around 25 years old. She was dressed in yellow silk and her skin was slightly plump. Her figure was graceful and enchanting. Her entire body emitted a mature and seductive aura, firmly attracting the gazes of many people. There were even many people in the living room who revealed deep infatuation in their eyes when they saw this beautiful figure. Moreover, there was a group of people following behind this woman. All of them were full of energy and their temples were bulging. Clearly, they weren't ordinary people. After Zhuowen indifferently glanced at the woman in yellow, his gaze landed on a man with an insolent gaze beside her. Coldness blossomed in his gaze and it was piercingly cold. This was because Zhuowen wasn't unfamiliar with this insolent man. It was Du Tao, the person who snatched his freshman contribution points at the plaza outside the dean's study room. However, this Du Tao suffered a double loss in the end. In the end, he was defeated by Zhuowen. Not only did he spit out all the contribution points that he snatched, even the contribution points that he originally had were all snatched away by Zhuowen. After seeing this Du Tao, Zhuowen already knew that this group of people didn't come with good intentions. It's the people from the Emperor Pavilion. I didn't expect this person to know the people from the Emperor Pavilion. The people in the living room soon saw the picture drawn on the robes of this group of people. The picture was of a wild and unruly man with his head raised and gazed at the sky. His gaze was arrogant, as though he was provoking the heavens. This picture was the symbol of the Emperor Pavilion. It was also the picture that all members of the Emperor Pavilion had to have on their robes. After recognizing the identity of this group of people, fear appeared in the eyes of everyone. The Emperor Pavilion's influence in the outer academy wasn't small. There were as many experts as there were clouds in the sect. It wasn't something that ordinary students could afford to offend. Junior Zhuowen, seems like it's really a coincidence. We just left not long ago and we already met again. Du Tao, who was beside the yellow-robed woman, glared at Zhuowen with hatred as he spoke in an ambiguous tone. That's right. It's really a coincidence. We still have to thank Senior Du Tao for the contribution points from before. Now that Senior Du Tao is here again, I'm sure you have quite a few contribution points on you. Are you planning to gift them to Junior? Zhuowen mocked. Creak. Du Tao clenched his fists as his eyes turned red. This Zhuowen was getting more and more outrageous. He actually dared to mock him in front of his face. This caused Du Tao to fly into a rage out of humiliation. So this brat is the #1 new student, Zhuowen? It's said that this brat snatched away the contribution points of He Tao and Du Tao. Even He Tao and Du Tao weren't a match for this brat. No wonder the 3 Spirit Void brothers lost so miserably. Everyone in the guest hall finally had a look of understanding on their faces. No wonder this new student's strength was so terrifying. So it turned out that he was the Zhuowen that everyone was talking about. Also, this Du Tao brought people from the Emperor Pavilion here. Most probably, they didn't come here with good intentions. This was especially so for the yellow-robed woman in the lead. Her strength was unfathomable. Many people here couldn't see through her cultivation base. The reason for this was most probably because her cultivation base far surpassed theirs. Although this woman had an enchanting appearance, she was most probably a rose with thorns. Although she was beautiful, she wasn't easy to touch. Just a touch would cause one to be injured. I heard that you snatched Du Tao's contribution points? The yellow-robed woman suddenly stomped her foot. Her beautiful eyes curled up in a dangerous arc as she spoke in an indifferent tone. He snatched the contribution points of us new students. Could it be that we can't snatch them from him as well? Zhuowen pointed at Du Tao as he coldly replied. The yellow-robed woman nodded. What you said makes sense. Since Du Tao snatched the contribution points of you new students naturally can snatch the contribution points of Du Tao as well. However, there's one thing you neglected. Du Tao is a member of our Emperor Pavilion. You beat up a member of our Emperor Pavilion and even snatched away his contribution points. This is a provocation to our Emperor Pavilion. The meaning of the yellow-robed woman's words was very clear. Zhuowen wasn't wrong to snatch Du Tao's contribution points. However, Du Tao was a member of the Emperor Pavilion. Zhuowen sneered. How laughable. You mean that I should be snatched by members of your Emperor Pavilion and not allowed to retaliate? That's only natural. The yellow-robed woman naturally replied. Hence, if you hand over all your contribution points now, as well as the jade key in your hand, kneel down and apologize to Du Tao, our Emperor Pavilion won't pursue your offense this time around. Zhuowen's expression gradually turned cold. This yellow-robed woman was truly tyrannical. Wasn't her way of doing things the same as allowing the government to burn the place but not allowing the commoners to light the lamps? Also, this yellow-robed woman's request was so overbearing. How could Zhuowen agree to such an unfair request? Have you considered? The yellow-robed woman spoke again. I've considered. Zhuowen calmly replied. The lips of the yellow-robed woman curled up. Seems like you are an intelligent person. You should be prepared to comply with my request, right? Scram. Chapter 10-15. Forced into the cultivation room, not only did the yellow-dressed lady's face stiffen, but even Du Tao and the rest behind her had a slight change in expression. Even the others in the living room fell into silence. The yellow-dressed lady's strength was definitely above Du Tao's. Otherwise, it would be impossible for Du Tao and the rest of the Peak Golden Venerables to be so respectful towards her. Obviously, she was at least an initial Heavenly Venerables. Moreover, her position in the Emperor Pavilion was probably not low. This could be seen from the attitude and behavior of Du Tao and the rest. However, Zhuowen did not give any face to the lady. Instead, he asked her to get lost. It could be said that he was extremely arrogant and had no qualms about it. Zhuowen, I think you are really refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Lady Lu Xiang is kind enough to give you a chance to apologize. You are really courting death with such an attitude. Du Tao stood out and pointed at Zhuowen as he spoke fiercely. I am talking to your master. Dog slave, don't come out and bark, Zhuowen said indifferently. Du Tao was stunned and immediately flew into a rage. This Zhuowen actually called him a dog slave. This was too arrogant. However, Du Tao did not flare up. He knew how strong Zhuowen was. With his strength, he would only be humiliating himself if he went against Zhuowen. The yellow-dressed lady called Lu Xiang's face was filled with coldness. Ever since she was born, this was the first time someone had asked her to get lost in front of her. It seems that the new students are getting more and more arrogant. Do you really think that you can be arrogant just because you got the first place among the new students? Do you really think that you can do whatever you want in the outer courtyard? Lu Xiang's voice became even colder, while her gaze became even sharper. At the same time, a terrifying aura burst forth. Waves of surging murderous aura descended from the sky. It was as if tens of thousands of horses were charging forward at the same time. The entire living room was swept up by a terrifying and violent wind, which spread out in all directions. Many people in the living room had a slight change in expression. Under this aura, they took a few steps back. Their eyes were filled with reverence. Lu Xiang's aura was very powerful, far surpassing that of ordinary peak golden venerables. This woman was actually an early-stage, heavenly venerables martial artist. Moreover, Lu Xiang was the same as He Tao and Du Tao. She had tempered her meridians many times in the cultivation pagoda, so her capacity for origin energy was many times greater than cultivators of the same level. Although Lu Xiang's cultivation was only at the early stage of the heavenly venerable realm, her battle prowess was far superior to Yun Zhongyang and Palm Masters. Even Yuan Zhao, who was at the intermediate stage of the heavenly venerable realm, might not necessarily be Lu Xiang's match. Therefore, after Lu Xiang burst out with a strong aura, Zhuowen's eyes became extremely serious. This Lu Xiang was even stronger than Yuan Zhao. Even if Zhuowen used the power of the second stage of bedevilment, he might not be able to gain the slightest advantage from her. Do you regret it now? Unfortunately, it's too late for you to regret because you've completely offended me. And offending me requires you to pay an extremely heavy price. Lu Xiang's delicate body slowly floated up, her long hair fluttering in the wind. Her cold eyes looked down at Zhuowen, as if Zhuowen's life was completely under her control. Boom! As soon as her voice fell, Lu Xiang waved her jade-like hand. Suddenly, a terrifying origin energy spiraled around her right hand like a spiral. It looked extremely terrifying. Zhuowen's eyes turned serious. He also blasted out a palm. His entire body was filled with a terrifying demonic aura. Billowing clouds of blood appeared above him, making the blood-red-haired and red-eyed Zhuowen look extremely mighty and terrifying. Bang! When the two palms collided, a terrifying power suddenly burst out. Then, a ring-shaped wave of air gushed out from between the two of them, and the surrounding space showed faint signs of collapsing. What terrifying power! Lu Xiang is at the early stage of the heavenly venerable realm. It's one thing for her to be able to unleash such a terrifying attack, but how can Zhuowen be so terrifying as well? He's only at the late stage of the Supreme Being stage. Everyone in the living room continuously retreated under the terrifying wave of air. Their eyes were filled with shock. They weren't shocked by Lu Xiang, but by Zhuowen. Zhuowen's cultivation was so low, and he was said to be a new student. In other words, he had yet to undergo the tempering of ice and fire energy. Yet, he was able to unleash such a terrifying combat strength. Once he entered the cultivation pagoda to train for a period of time, wouldn't he be able to defy the heavens? Lu Xiang frowned. She was also a little surprised by the strength Zhuowen had displayed. However, her strength wasn't limited to this point. Lu Xiang's eyes narrowed as she thought of this. Her right palm spat out an even more terrifying origin energy. Then, Zhuowen felt the pressure on his right palm suddenly increase. It was as if a huge mountain was pressing down on him. It was unstoppable. After spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood, Zhuowen retreated dozens of steps. His gaze was extremely gloomy. These geniuses from the Outer Academy were indeed incredible. After undergoing the tempering of the cultivation pagoda, an initial heavenly sovereign was actually able to unleash such a terrifying combat strength. It was the heaven-defying combat strength displayed by these geniuses from the Outer Academy that caused the current Zhuowen to be even more eager to enter the cultivation pagoda to train. He wondered if his combat strength would undergo a powerful transformation after undergoing the tempering and baptism of ice and fire energy. Your combat strength is indeed strong enough. However, in front of me, it's like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Lu Xiang's mouth was filled with a sneer as she watched Zhuowen continuously retreat. Her jade-like feet gently tapped on the empty air, and she instantly arrived in front of Zhuowen. Her jade-like hand waved once again. Terrifying yuan power seemingly transformed into an intense hurricane, transforming into a frightening gale in front of her. Zhuowen's face sank slightly and he formed a seal with both hands. Immediately, 3 pairs of lightning wings sprouted from his back. Zhuowen then transformed into a bolt of lightning, disappearing from Lu Xiang's sight in an instant. His speed had risen to its limit. Lu Xiang clearly did not expect Zhuowen's speed to soar so quickly. The palm force that she blasted out hit nothing but air. Subsequently, a bolt of lightning instantly arrived in front of the stone door of the 37th private room. The jade key in her hand was violently inserted into the keyhole. Creak! The sound of gears turning was heard. Subsequently, the stone door of the 37th private room slowly opened. A wave of rich ice and fire energy rushed out from behind the stone door. You want to enter? It won't be that easy. Lu Xiang shouted. Her jade-like foot tapped on the empty air, and she instantly arrived behind Zhuowen. Subsequently, she blasted out a palm. Immediately, countless yuan power condensed in the surroundings, as if the power of the world was pouring into this palm. Under this palm force, it suddenly pressed down on Zhuowen's back. What a terrifying palm force! Lu Xiang has used her full strength in this attack. That Zhuowen is going to suffer. Feeling the terror of Lu Xiang's palm, many people in the hall were shocked. Their eyes were filled with pity as they looked at Zhuowen. Du Tao sneered. Lu Xiang was an existence belonging to the upper echelons of the Emperor Pavilion. Although her cultivation was only at the early stage of the heavenly venerable realm, her combat strength was indeed more terrifying than an ordinary mid-stage heavenly venerable. She was close to a late-stage heavenly venerable expert. No matter how strong Zhuowen's combat strength was impossible for him to be Lu Xiang's opponent. Most likely, under this attack, this lad would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Zhuowen also felt the powerful palm force behind him. His gaze was solemn to the extreme. In the end, he still used the strength of a second-stage bedevilment. His blood-red hair crazily grew to his waist, and his demonic energy surged to the heavens. It was unknown how much stronger he was than before. Emo Sha. The billowing blood chi turned into 10 blood spears. Subsequently, these 10 blood spears formed a blood-red barrier in front of Zhuowen, wanting to completely block the terrifying palm force behind him. Rumble! The heaven-like palm force arrived in an instant, heavily smashing onto the blood-red barrier formed by the 10 blood spears. After that, the palm force stagnated for a moment, and it was precisely this moment that allowed Zhuowen to take a step forward and enter the stone door. Upon entering the stone door, Zhuowen did not hesitate to close the stone door. The terrifying palm force heavily smashed onto the stone door, causing the entire 10th floor of the cultivation pagoda to shake violently. Lu Xiang's beautiful eyes narrowed as she stared at the closed stone door. Her face was filled with a dark and cold expression. She did not expect that Zhuowen would be so slippery. He had actually entered the stone door right under her nose. This cunning little bastard is not Miss Lu Xiang's opponent. Right now, he's hiding in the box like a coward. Du Tao and the others came to Lu Xiang's side. Among them, Du Tao said indignantly. Lu Xiang's brows slightly furrowed. Shortly after, she casually said, "This lad is also lucky this time, allowing him to hide in the box. However, when he comes out, he won't be so lucky." Miss Lu Xiang's meaning is? Du Tao asked knowingly. Wait. Looking at the time limit displayed on the stone door of this lad's box, it should be 1 month. After 1 month, this lad will come out. During this 1 month, we'll guard the 10th floor. When he comes out, I'll make him regret it. Lu Xiang coldly said. I'll listen to Miss Lu Xiang. Du Tao was overjoyed. Perhaps Zhuowen's battle strength might increase during this 1 month of training in the cultivation pagoda. However, he was very clear about Lu Xiang's strength. She was definitely not someone that Zhuowen could contend against. Even if Zhuowen had a breakthrough in this 1 month, Du Tao did not believe that Zhuowen had the possibility of threatening Lu Xiang. Because, not only was Lu Xiang very strong, but because she was that person's younger sister, she had many powerful life-saving trump cards on her. When those trump cards were used, even a peak Empyrean would not be able to do anything to Lu Xiang, let alone this Zhuowen. This was a space with alternating red and blue colors. The area of this space was not large, only a few hundred square meters. This area was very large for a person. After entering the stone door, this was the scene that appeared in front of Zhuowen's eyes. In the center of this alternating red and blue space, there was a praying mat. Below the praying mat, there was a rather mysterious pattern. This pattern should be an array. Zhuowen's right hand covered his chest as he slowly came to this space. Just now, Lu Xiang gave him a lot of pressure. This Lu Xiang was definitely a famous genius in the outer court. Otherwise, it would be impossible for her to have such a terrifying battle strength at the early Empyrean realm. Lu Xiang, this bitch, is obviously trying to beat me to death. Zhuowen hatefully said. Lad. Lu Xiang and the others seem to be preparing to wait for you outside for a month. After a month, I'm afraid you'll be in even more trouble. Hee, to be beaten up like this by a woman, you've really embarrassed me. Xiao Hei's voice suddenly sounded. Her voice was full of ridicule. Chapter 10:16. 7 Emotions Precious Seal, don't you still have a month's time? Furthermore, this is the first time you've entered the cultivation tower to train. The effect of this time's refinement of your meridians will definitely be the best. At that time, your battle strength will definitely increase by several fold. After a month, you might not even be afraid of Lu Xiang. Xiao Hei said indifferently. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded his head. Soon after, he arrived at the praying mat in the private room. The fire and ice energy in the private room was extremely dense, and the praying mat was the area with the densest fire and ice energy in the private room. Walking to the praying mat in the middle of the room, Zhuowen slowly sat on it. Immediately, a terrifying energy, one hot and one cold, endlessly flowed into his body, flowing along his meridians and circulating around. The tempering effect of the fire and ice energy was indeed very good. After merely circulating around Zhuowen's body once, he could clearly feel that his meridians seemed to be a little tougher than before. This fire and ice energy is indeed very mysterious. The tempering effect is actually so good. When he felt that his meridians were tougher than before, Zhuowen's eyes flickered with a bright light, and his face revealed a wisp of excitement. According to this effect, after a month, his meridians would surely be able to become tougher by a few times under the effects of this tempering, and it might even be able to expand greatly to accommodate even more origin energy. Sitting cross-legged on the praying mat, Zhuowen flipped his right hand and took out a jade tablet with mysterious runes engraved on it. This jade tablet was the first jade tablet that the top new student had obtained in the Thousand Beasts Grotto. At that time, when Zhuowen obtained this jade tablet, the demonic runes on his cheeks had a strange reaction. At that time, he had suspected that the runes on the jade tablet were not ordinary. However, after leaving the Thousand Beasts Grotto, the top 10 new students were directly taken away by the dean. After that, many things happened. Therefore, Zhuowen did not have the time to study the runes on the jade tablet. Now that he had entered the cultivation tower, Zhuowen finally had the time to properly study the runes on the jade tablet. Xiao He, can you tell the origin of this rune? Zhuowen suddenly asked. At this moment, Xiao He was standing on Zhuowen's shoulder. Her small eyes stared at the jade tablet in Zhuowen's hand with a serious look. Her eyes flickered and no one knew what she was thinking. After pondering for a moment, Xiao He said solemnly, "The talisman markings on this jade token are very strange. There's actually a trace of a saint's aura within it. Could it be a saint inscription?" "Saint inscription? What's that?" Zhuowen asked in surprise. The so-called saint runes are actually the power and laws of the saint. It's a terrifying power that conforms with the laws of heaven and earth. Let me put it this way. Every attack of a saint can leave behind such powerful and strange saint runes in the world. In a sense, the saint runes should represent the saint's attack, Xiao He said with a serious expression. Hearing this, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed, revealing a trace of shock. The saint rune represents the attack of a saint? You mean to say that the talisman markings on this jade token were left behind by a saint? To Zhuowen, a saint was a legendary figure. It was said that such an existence could cover the sky with one hand and cause the sun and moon to fall. It could be said that once a saint appeared, heaven and earth would change color. They were existences that could only be looked at but not touched. The only saints that Zhuowen had come into contact with were Emperor Fenglai, Taoist Songlong, and the fighting Buddha demon sage. However, the three of them were basically people from 10,000 years ago. Moreover, Zhuowen had only come into contact with the things left behind by the three saints. He had never seen the saints themselves. In Zhuowen's eyes, a saint was still a distant and powerful existence. Zhuowen had always been in awe of such existences. Maybe not, Xiao He said lightly. Hearing this, Zhuowen frowned slightly. Xiao He's words were too ambiguous. What did she mean by maybe not? Seeing Zhuowen's expression, Xiao He explained, "The talisman markings on this jade token indeed have a trace of the saint rune's aura. However, the energy contained within is too weak. It's so weak that it doesn't seem like a saint rune at all. You should know that the saint rune represents the power and laws of a saint. Although it can't be compared to a real saint, it's not something that an ordinary emperor can compare to. However, the aura in this jade token is too weak." Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded. The power of the so-called saint rune in this jade token was indeed very weak. He did not know why this was so. Could it be that this was not a saint rune at all? "Kid, didn't you say that the saint rune in this jade token caused the demonic rune on your cheek to move? Try to inject the power of the demonic rune into this jade token. Perhaps something different will appear," Xiao He suddenly said. Zhuowen helplessly spread out his hands and said, "I can't control the power of the demonic rune at all. How can I inject its power into the saint rune?" "Use your demonic eye. Your demonic eye should be able to slightly control a trace of the demonic rune's power. This Dragon Lord can sense that the power of the demonic rune is definitely related to the runes on this jade token," Xiao He instigated. Zhuowen had a feeling that Xiao He was up to no good, but he could not find any loopholes. In the end, he chose to believe Xiao He. "Let's give it a try." As he spoke, Zhuowen tapped his forehead. Immediately, the Buddha demon eye was summoned. The Buddha demon eye switched to the demon eye, and a trace of demonic intent gushed out. Immediately, the demonic rune on Zhuowen's cheek appeared, and a terrifying demonic aura surged out from the demonic rune. Swoosh! Under Zhuowen's control, the demonic aura gushed out and surged into the jade token in Zhuowen's palm. Subsequently, the sparkling and translucent jade token was immediately corroded by the pitch-black demonic aura, making it look extremely eerie and terrifying. Nothing seems to have happened? Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly as he asked in confusion. "Something's wrong. There's a change. Look, the runes on the jade token are beginning to move strangely, Xiao He suddenly said. Zhuowen immediately cast his gaze over and saw that the jade tablet had begun to tremble. In the beginning, it was only a slight tremble. Subsequently, the trembling became more and more intense. It was as though the entire jade tablet was about to collapse under this trembling. A blazing jade glow shot out from the jade token into the sky and swept towards the ceiling of the room. Subsequently, Zhuowen was stunned to discover that the jade glow was like countless tadpoles that continuously swam in the air, as if they were drawing some kind of strange picture. What is this thing? The picture that was being drawn in the air became clearer and clearer. A supreme and sacred aura flowed out from the picture, causing Zhuowen and Xiao Hei's eyes to narrow slightly. When the picture was completely drawn, it actually shattered into countless jade glow. Subsequently, these jade glow burst out and instantly swept into the space between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan as he held his forehead with his right hand. The speed of the jade glow was too fast. Before Zhuowen could even react, it had actually entered the space between his eyebrows. However, the pain on his forehead did not last for long and quickly dissipated. Subsequently, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes, a bright light flickering in his pupils. Kid, what happened just now? After the jade glow drew the picture in the air, why did it suddenly drill into the space between your eyebrows? Is there some kind of danger? Xiao He asked somewhat worriedly. Zhuowen shook his head and said somewhat excitedly, Xiao He, there's actually a kind of cultivation technique hidden in the lines of the jade token. Moreover, it's an extremely powerful cultivation technique. There's a cultivation technique hidden inside? Xiao He was taken aback. Soon after, she revealed a look of understanding and said, no wonder the energy contained in the saint runes is so weak. It turns out that it's not an offensive saint rune. Instead, it relies on the power of the saint runes to inscribe a secret cultivation technique. However, since it's a cultivation technique inscribed with saint runes, wouldn't it be a saint cultivation technique? It's extremely precious. Why would it be placed in the jade token of the top new disciple? Has the outer court dean lost his mind? Xiao He knew better than anyone how precious a saint cultivation technique was. Even a 9th-level emperor would go crazy for it. Why would the outer court dean take it out as a reward for the top new disciple? In Xiao Hei's eyes, the dean's actions were undoubtedly the result of a mental breakdown. Apart from this explanation, Xiao He really could not think of any other explanation for the dean's actions. I haven't finished speaking yet. This cultivation technique is incomplete. This cultivation technique has a total of 7 levels. However, there's only the first level in the jade token. The other 6 levels are not there at all. Zhuowen spread out his hands and said helplessly. Only the first level? Xiao He was taken aback. Soon after, she calmed down. It seemed that the cultivation technique recorded in the jade token was severely incomplete. Only the first level was recorded. Even if it was a saint cultivation technique, it was probably much worse than a complete emperor cultivation technique. No wonder the dean was willing to take out a saint cultivation technique as a reward for the top new disciple. It was actually a defective cultivation technique. What's the name of your cultivation technique? Xiao He suddenly asked. 7 Emotions Treasured Seal. Zhuowen said indifferently. Judging from the name, it seems to have something to do with the 7 emotions and 6 desires. What's the specific use of it? Xiao He asked doubtfully. The so-called 7 emotions are joy, anger, sorrow, fear, love, disgust, and lust. Among them, they are the most basic emotions and desires of the human body. The 7 emotions treasured seal is a powerful cultivation technique created with these emotions as its essence. Among them, joy, anger, and love, the 3 treasured seals can greatly increase one's strength. It can increase one's strength by several times or even dozens of times. As for sorrow, fear, disgust, and lust, they are similar to the power of curses. They can greatly weaken the opponent's strength. A warrior who possesses the 7 emotions treasured seal can easily defeat his opponent by strengthening himself and weakening his opponent. It is a very powerful auxiliary cultivation technique. Speaking of this, Zhuowen's eyes had a hint of excitement. Although the 7 emotions treasured seal did not have a strong power, it was very useful in a battle. With the 7 emotions treasured seal, even if Zhuowen's strength was weaker than his opponent, he could still defeat the opponent with the 7 emotions enhancement and curses. What a strange cultivation technique! What kind of emotion cultivation technique did you obtain? Xiao Hei's eyes revealed a hint of interest. Suddenly, she asked Zhuowen. Chapter 10:17. Mystic Soul Ice Butterfly. The 7 emotions treasured seal was truly amazing. 3 of the emotions could increase one's combat strength, while the other 4 could greatly reduce the strength of the enemy. It could be said that this was an extremely powerful cultivation technique. If used well, Zhuowen's strength would increase to a terrifying extent. However, what made Zhuowen disappointed was that this cultivation technique was actually incomplete. There was only the Fury treasured seal inscribed on the jade tablet. If there were a few more seals, perhaps Zhuowen's combat strength would increase by a lot. In this 1 month, I'll cultivate the Fury treasured seal and use the ice and fire energy to temper my meridians. His eyes flickered as Zhuowen sat quietly on the praying mat. His palms were clasped together as all the acupoints on his body were activated. He began to guide the ice and fire energy in the surroundings into his body, silently tempering his meridians. After all, Zhuowen was on the 10th floor of the cultivation pagoda. The ice and fire energy here was definitely 10 times denser than on the 1st floor. Naturally, the effect would be much better. While Zhuowen began his closed-door cultivation in the private room, Lu Xiang sat cross-legged in the middle of the living room outside the stone door. There was not a single person within a few dozen feet of Lu Xiang. Everyone else kept their distance and stared at the thorny rose with fear. The conflict between Lu Xiang and Zhuowen instantly spread throughout the cultivation pagoda. The cultivators on the other floors all headed towards the 10th floor. Many of them wanted to see Lu Xiang's appearance. Not only was Lu Xiang one of the upper echelons of the Emperor Pavilion, she had a powerful cultivation base and powerful combat strength. Her appearance was also outstanding. Many people came here for Lu Xiang. Of course, there were also many people who came here. They mainly wanted to see the true appearance of the number 1 new student, Zhuowen, who caused a huge commotion the moment he entered the outer hall. One must know that the matter of this brat robbing He Tao, Du Tao and the others had already spread throughout the outer hall. And this time, one of the upper echelons of the Emperor Pavilion, Lu Xiang, actually came to deal with this Zhuowen. In an instant, Zhuowen was pushed to the heart of the storm. Many people began to look forward to the scene when Zhuowen walked out of the private room 1 month later. A mere freshman can cause such a commotion the moment he enters. This Zhuowen must be the first, right? That might not be the case. Back then, when that peerless monster Mu Qinshu entered, the commotion he caused was no less than this Zhuowen. Sigh. Not only is Mu Qinshu reputed as the number 1 beauty in the outer court, her natural talent and strength are terrifying to the extreme. Unfortunately, she broke through to the Emperor realm 3 months ago and entered the inner court of the 9th Netherworld realm. What a pity! The crowd that had reached the 10th floor began to whisper among themselves. All of them were deeply moved by the commotion that Zhuowen had caused. However, there were also quite a few people who disagreed with this view. Many people still remembered that when Mu Qinshu entered the outer court, the commotion she caused was no less than that of Zhuowen. After all, Mu Qinshu was reputed as the number 1 beauty in the outer court. Not only was she talented, but she was also devastatingly beautiful. It was unknown how many youths were mesmerized by her. However, it was a pity that Mu Qinshu had successfully broken through to the Emperor realm 3 months ago and entered the inner court of the 9th Netherworld realm to cultivate. One must know that Mu Qinshui had only entered the outer court for slightly more than a year. To be able to break through to the Emperor realm and enter the inner court in such a short period of time was considered a first in the outer court. And now, Zhuowen had also caused such a huge commotion. Many people also began to compare Zhuowen and Mu Qinshui. Of course, if everyone knew about the relationship between Mu Qinshui and Zhuowen, it would probably cause an even greater commotion. Although the commotion that Zhuowen had caused was indeed great, there was pity in the eyes of the crowd gathered on the 10th level. Now Lu Xiang had stepped out. One must know that Lu Xiang was not only one of the higher-ups in the Emperor Pavilion, but also one of the more famous geniuses in the outer court. An existence that ordinary seniors did not dare to provoke. And Zhuowen did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. He actually dared to provoke Lu Xiang. It was likely that he would suffer a great deal. Although Lu Xiangmei was beautiful, and she had many admirers in the outer courtyard, none of them dared to approach her. The main reason was that she had a cold and arrogant personality, and her standards were extremely high. Others privately called her a rose with thorns, but when they looked at her from afar, they couldn't approach her. One was a rose with thorns, while the other was the #1 new student. The clash between the two naturally caused quite a number of people to be filled with anticipation. Most people also understood in their hearts that Zhuowen's strength was indeed quite good. However, he would still suffer greatly at Lu Xiang's hands. Zhuowen was naturally unaware of what was happening in the outside world. At this moment, he was using the ice and fire energy to continuously refine the meridians in his body. At the same time, he did not forget to cultivate the Fury Treasure Seal of the 7 Emotions Treasure Seal. Time was like fine sand between one's fingers as it gradually flowed. Very quickly, a month had passed. Within the private room, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. An extremely powerful aura burst out from his body, followed by a muffled thunder-like sound. "I've broken through." As Zhuowen softly muttered, the corners of his mouth revealed a carefree smile. At this moment, the aura on his body was much more powerful than before. His cultivation had also broken through from the late sovereign stage to the peak sovereign stage. He was only a step away from the golden sovereign stage. Creak! Slowly getting up, Zhuowen suddenly swung his arms. Immediately, a crisp creaking sound was heard. A powerful force was violently flung out from his arms, transforming into a ring-shaped air wave that shot forward. The air vibrated, as if space was collapsing. What a powerful force! My meridians have actually become several times stronger than before after a month of refinement. Zhuowen was a little surprised at the powerful strength that he had displayed as he clenched his hands. If Zhuowen's meridians were like a trickling stream before, then after being tempered, Zhuowen's meridians were like a vast ocean. The yuan power that surged within his meridians was like a surging river, surging far beyond his meridians. The ice and fire energy in the cultivation pagoda does have a miraculous effect on the refinement of meridians. However, this is the first time the refinement of your meridians will have the best effect. The effects will get worse in the future. Xiao He lightly said. Zhuowen nodded. Back then, the Chongsam woman had also said that the first month in the cultivation pagoda was the most important period for a cultivator to build their foundation. Of course, the effects were also the most obvious. From Zhuowen's expression, it could be seen that the effects of this refinement were indeed very strong. It's time to go out. Zhuowen's gaze converged on the stone door in front of him. His gaze was piercingly cold. He knew that Lu Xiang and the others were still waiting for him outside the stone door. Just as Zhuowen was about to leave the stone door, the sacred ice rune in Zhuowen's left hand suddenly lit up, causing Zhuowen to be surprised. Whoosh! A ray of light suddenly swept out from his left hand. Then, the ice scepter appeared in front of him. A terrifying chill spread out, causing Zhuowen's pupils to shrink. The 10,000-year dark soul ice parasite larva. Zhuowen stared at the ice scepter. Naturally, the first thing he thought of was the 10,000-year dark soul ice parasite larva. When Zhuowen was at the entrance of the magma world, the 10,000-year dark soul ice parasite larva had a great reaction to the ice scepter. Then, the 10,000-year dark soul ice parasite larva had attached itself to the ice scepter. At that time, Xiao He had said that the larva had reached the critical moment of breaking out of its cocoon and transforming into a butterfly. Xiao He. Zhuowen turned to look at Xiao He and asked, "Kid, this 10,000-year dark soul ice parasite is about to break out of its cocoon and transform into a butterfly. Quickly use the ice energy in your sacred ice rune to help it," Xiao He suddenly said excitedly. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded. Suddenly, a powerful chill swept out from the sacred ice rune and poured into the ice scepter. As for the 10,000-year black soul ice parasite larva, it didn't reject it either. It actually sucked in all of Zhuo Wen's cold energy. Then, the larva began to squirm and struggle in the ice crystal. It even let out ear-piercing screeches. "It's about to begin," Xiao He said solemnly. As soon as he said that, the ice snow scepter actually started to melt. The powerful cold chi contained within was actually all absorbed by the 10,000-year mysterious soul ice parasite larva. The ice crystal that the larva was in became even more sparkling and translucent, and the cold chi was oppressive. Crack! The sound of shattering rang out continuously. Then, the surface of the ice crystal began to crack. Finally, the ice crystal shattered into countless fine powder. A 7-colored light surged out from the ice crystal. Then, an extremely terrifying aura burst out. "Yah!" A sharp screeching sound burst out from the 7-colored light, causing Zhuowen to squint. Then, a figure covered in the 7-colored light slowly swept out. The figure gradually grew bigger, and a pair of 7-colored wings grew out. The 7-colored light also became extremely dense. In an instant, the entire box was filled with the terrifying 7-colored light. When the 7-colored light gradually faded, a huge 7-colored butterfly appeared in front of Zhuowen. The 7-colored butterfly had a pair of colorful eyes. It stared at Zhuowen with a trace of curiosity and dependence in its eyes. Zhuowen could clearly feel the dependence in the 7-colored butterfly's eyes. Obviously, this could not be separated from the fact that he had dripped his blood on it. "Yah!" The dark soul ice butterfly screeched again. Then, it spread its 7-colored wings and its speed soared to the extreme. It arrived in front of Zhuowen. Its colorful eyes stared at Zhuowen and it screeched again. There was a trace of timidity and also a trace of joy. So fast! Zhuowen was stunned. Then, he stretched out his right hand and gently stroked the soft fur on the dark soul ice butterfly's neck. The dark soul ice butterfly did not resist. Instead, it rubbed against Zhuowen's palm intimately and let out a comfortable cry. It was soft and very obedient and cute, as expected of a meta beast with the potential to become a demon emperor. It was born with the cultivation of the peak of the Xuanzuan realm. Zhuowen looked at the dark soul ice parasite in front of him in amazement and softly muttered. Chapter 1018. Lu Xiang, Xiao He. How do I increase the strength of the mystic soul ice butterfly? Zhuowen thought of a crucial problem and asked Xiao He. The dark soul ice butterfly has a cold nature and is a meta beast of extreme yin and extreme cold. If you want to increase the dark soul ice butterfly's strength, you will need to find some powerful cold chi as nourishment for the dark soul ice butterfly. This way, the dark soul ice butterfly's strength will increase rapidly. Of course, even without the nourishment of cold chi, the mystic soul ice butterfly's strength will still increase. However, the speed will be very slow, probably in years, Xiao He said indifferently. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed when he heard that. It looked like he needed to find some powerful cold chi if he wanted to increase the mystic soul ice butterfly's strength. However, the mystic soul ice butterfly had only just broken out of its cocoon, so its strength should not have stabilized yet. As a result, Zhuowen did not plan on immediately finding cold qi to feed the mystic soul ice butterfly. "I'll let the little guy enter the space of the Saint Rune of Ice first." With a flicker of light in his eyes, Zhuowen directed the mystic soul ice butterfly to enter the Saint Rune of Ice. However, the little guy was clearly very reliant on Zhuowen. It intimately rubbed against the corner of Zhuowen's clothes as its eyes were filled with reluctance. However, under Zhuowen's strict request, the mystic soul ice butterfly could only reluctantly enter the Saint Rune of Ice. "Nurture this little guy well. It's still young right now, so its strength might not be of use to you yet. However, if you can raise its strength to the level of a demon emperor, then it'll be incredible. At that time, it'll be of great help to you," Xiao He instructed. Zhuowen nodded in understanding. Xiao He was right. The mystic soul ice butterfly's potential was very great. He had to make good use of this origin beast. In the short term, the mystic soul ice butterfly might not be of much help to him, but in the long term, it would be of great use. After putting away the mystic soul ice butterfly, Zhuowen looked at the stone door. He seemed to see Lu Xiang's beautiful figure sitting cross-legged outside the door. This time, Zhuowen was filled with confidence. His meridians had expanded several times in the past month, so his battle strength had naturally increased by several times as well. Coupled with the fact that he cultivated a cultivation method like the Fury Treasure Seal that could increase his battle strength, it would be very difficult for Lu Xiang, who had put him into a sorry state last time. At this moment, the living room on the 10th floor was filled with many figures. Most of these figures were the students that had come from the other floors over the past month. After all, the matter of Lu Xiang waiting in the 10th floor's guest room with the intention of fiercely teaching Zhuo Wen a lesson had long since spread like wildfire in the cultivation tower. Now that a month had passed, Zhuo Wen ought to come out. Therefore, everyone came to watch the show. They all wanted to see how Lu Xiang would teach that brat Zhuo Wen a lesson. Lu Xiang, who was sitting cross-legged in the living room, slowly opened her beautiful eyes. There was a sharp brilliance in her eyes that was like the light of a sword in the cold night. It couldn't be looked at directly. A month has passed. Zhuo Wen should come out now. Du Tao stood not far behind Lu Xiang. His cold gaze was firmly fixed on the 37th private room. Everyone in the living room also very tacitly quieted down. Their gazes were also fixed on the 37th private room. They were also looking forward to the moment when Zhuo Wen would come out. Creak! The soft sound of a door opening slowly resounded. Soon after, the stone door of the 37th private room slowly opened. A tall and straight figure finally appeared before everyone's eyes, completely attracting everyone's attention. After being a coward for a month, you are finally willing to come out. Lu Xiang's beautiful eyes were filled with killing intent as she stared at Zhuo Wen. Her voice was filled with a biting cold chill. The corners of Zhuo Wen's mouth slightly curled. His clear eyes stared at Lu Xiang in front of him as he faintly smiled and said, "After making Miss Lu Xiang wait outside for a month, it seems that I, Zhuo Wen, am quite charming. Actually, why is Miss Lu Xiang so persistent? Although I admit that my charm is indeed high, it is not to the extent that you would suffer outside for a month because of me, right?" When these words were spoken, the entire living room became silent. Everyone had many guesses about Zhuo Wen's reaction after he came out. It could be fear, it could be begging for mercy, it could be shock, and so on. However, Zhuo Wen's reaction and words greatly exceeded everyone's expectations. Not only did he not show any fear or negative emotions, he was instead extremely calm. He even said such words that were somewhat flirtatious. Lu Xiang was also startled. After she reacted, she flew into a rage out of humiliation. Her almond-shaped eyes were filled with a dark chill as a terrifying aura burst out from her body. Lu Xiang could be said to be a classic example of both beauty and talent in the outer academy. She had countless suitors. Therefore, she thought highly of herself and was extremely arrogant. No one had ever dared to tease her in public. However, at this moment, this young man with clear eyes in front of her was actually able to say such teasing words in such a calm manner. Lu Xiang felt that she had never been humiliated before. You think too highly of yourself. If you were not like a coward who hid behind the stone door for a month, I would not have waited for a month because of a clown like you. Lu Xiang coldly said. However, a clown like me just had to make Miss Lu Xiang wait for a month, right? This kind of treatment should not be given to other men, right? Then I am very honored to take Miss Lu Xiang's first time. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with ridicule as he spoke. Wow! As soon as these words came out, there was an uproar among the people in the living room. Zhuowen was too bold. He actually said such teasing words again and again. Wasn't he trying to anger Lu Xiang to death? Of course, there were also many students who looked at Zhuowen with extremely unfriendly gazes. These people were naturally Lu Xiang's admirers. Since Zhuowen dared to say such teasing words in front of them, they were naturally unhappy. You brat who speaks without thinking. See if I don't tear your mouth apart. A gloomy voice suddenly echoed. Before Lu Xiang could make a move, a black-robed man swept out from the crowd and pounced towards Zhuowen. Both of his hands were in the shape of claws, and terrifying black essence force poured out like two sharp blades. This person's aura was slightly stronger than the three Ling Su brothers. Although he was also at the peak of the Golden Venerable Realm, his combat power was probably not much weaker than Du Tao. You have to pay the price for speaking without thinking. The black-robed man instantly arrived in front of Zhuowen. The two sharp black blades formed by the Black Yuan power suddenly clasped together and strangled towards Zhuowen's neck. This person actually intended to kill him. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. The Yuan power in his body was raised to the extreme. Then, he suddenly threw a punch. Suddenly, a terrifying Yuan power surged out and formed a terrifying wind. This punch was very terrifying, and it seemed to have the strength of 1,000 caddies. Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking resounded. Then, the black-robed man felt an extremely terrifying destructive force on his hand. Then, a piercing pain entered his mind and the black-robed man was directly sent flying. Boom! The black-robed man landed heavily on the ground, and there was a rather frightening sound of vibration. Then, there was a frightening scream. The black-robed man's hands drooped down powerlessly and he screamed hysterically. His hands were actually crippled just like that. Du Tao's pupils shrank as he stared at the miserable black-robed man. He knew this black-robed man. He was one of Lu Xiang's suitors and his strength was not inferior to his. But now, this black-robed man was actually defeated by Zhuowen in a single move. Even his hands were crippled. When did Zhuowen's strength become so terrifying? This bastard's strength has increased so much? Could it be the effect of the ice and fire energy in the cultivation tower? Du Tao stared at Zhuowen's figure with fear and muttered. Lu Xiang frowned slightly. She did not expect that Zhuowen's strength would become so strong now. His strength was somewhat beyond her expectations. The black-robed man, whose strength was comparable to Du Tao's, actually had his hands crippled in a single move? Although she was surprised by Zhuowen's current strength, Lu Xiang did not have any fear. In her opinion, even if Zhuowen's strength had increased by a lot after being tempered by the ice and fire energy, there was still a gap between them. Therefore, she did not take the combat strength that Zhuowen had just displayed to heart. It seems that you have gained quite a lot in this 1 month. No wonder you were so cocky the moment you came out. However, you can't be thinking that after training in the cultivation tower for a month, you will be my opponent, right? Lu Xiang's beautiful eyes were filled with anger as she said. It's not that I think, it's definitely, Zhuowen said straightforwardly. These words caused the other people in the living room to reveal a strange expression. This Zhuowen seemed to be a little too confident. He even dared to say such arrogant words. Good, good. Since you are so confident, I will let you know how pathetic your confidence is. Lu Xiang laughed. Her jade-like feet tapped on the ground. Instantly, Energy swirled around her hands, gathering into balls of spiraling energy that continuously revolved around her hands. Subsequently, she pushed both of her palms out. With a powerful might that could shatter mountains, she pressed them towards Zhuowen below. Zhuowen quietly stood at the same spot, a trace of graveness surfaced in his eyes. Although his meridians had been tempered by the ice and fire energy of the cultivation tower and his combat strength had increased by several times, Lu Xiang's combat strength was also not weak. Therefore, Zhuowen had no choice but to treat her with caution. However, just as Zhuowen was about to make his move, he keenly discovered that an extremely terrifying force had swept over from the side and blocked in front of him. A gale whistled. This inexplicable force had turned into a wind wall in front of Zhuowen. At this moment, Lu Xiang had also arrived in front of the wind wall. Both of her hands suddenly smashed against the wind wall. A terrifying spiraling force swept out, forming two terrifying hurricanes. Deng deng deng! However, the might of the howling wind wall was too terrifying. Lu Xiang's pretty face changed slightly. Her feet stepped on the air, and she actually retreated dozens of steps. Her beautiful eyes were solemn as she stared at the wind wall that had appeared out of nowhere. "Who is it?" Lu Xiang tenderly shouted. Her beautiful eyes were filled with killing intent as she looked around the living room. This wind wall was not Zhuowen's technique. In fact, Zhuowen had not even used his technique. Therefore, this wind wall could only be created by someone else to block in front of Zhuowen. "Miss Lu Xiang, can you give me some face and let little brother Zhuowen go?" You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.